Chapter 1092. After several months of refining, the twin chi-connected branch formation disc had been popularized in the Hautian Alliance's camp in the Force Province. Not only the Force Province, but the other provinces had also begun to benefit from it. However, due to the lack of quantity, the other provinces were not as popular as the Force Province. After all, it was something refined by Lu Yi. Naturally, the Force Province had to satisfy their own needs first before they could provide it to other provinces. Lu Yi believed that the situation would improve in a few months. This was because Lu Ye's original body and clone were both at the same time. The number of twin chi-connected branch formation discs that could be refined each time would increase exponentially. The people from the myriad Devil Ridge were not blind. Naturally, they saw the changes on the Hautian Alliance's side. Moreover, the two camps had already planted spies in each other's camp. In fact, the myriad Devil Ridge had long known about the existence of the twin chi-connected branch formation disc. They had even tried to get a few formation discs to study and imitate them. However, this thing was not something that could be easily replicated. Back in the blood refinement realm, even a top refining grandmaster like Ouyang Zi could not do much about it. If he really wanted to refine it, he could only rely on the pitifully low success rate after repeated failures. Therefore, even if the myriad Devil Ridge obtained the twin chi-connected branch formation disc, they could not refine it on a large scale. They could only be jealous. Lin Yu's position in the myriad Devil Ridge's camp was not very high, but she was still a past master. She had long heard about the existence of the twin chi-connected branch formation disc. She had also mentioned it to her clone, Li Tai Bai. Now that she spoke, the meaning behind her words was self-evident. Lu Yi was already prepared. He casually tossed a storage bag to Lin Yu. Lin Yu took it and suppressed the surprise in her heart. She opened it and was soon shocked. There were exactly 100 twin chi-connected branch formation discs inside. Lu Yi said, "Since we're going to cooperate, I think we should be more open and honest. There's no need to hide anything, and there's no need to scheme against each other. What do you think, fellow Taoist Lin?" Lin Yu fell silent and sighed slightly. "Fellow Taoist Lu, you're magnanimous. I'm ashamed." She originally intended to use the cooperation between the two families to gain some benefits from Lu Yi. Her purpose was this twin chi-connected branches array disc. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought up such a topic at this time. Who would have thought that she didn't need to say anything at all, as they were already prepared? A moment later, Lu Yi watched Lin Yu leave and continued to set up the fortifications. The twin chi-connected branch formation disc was a strategic resource. Logically speaking, it should not be given away. However, he was the one who had refined this item. Giving away 100 of them was nothing. This way, he could increase the overall strength of the Dark Moon Forest Pass and better defend against the fissures. Lin Yu's speed was still very fast. In just half a day, she brought more than 2 million Devil Ridge cultivators to the side of the fissure to join in the fight against the Zerg and build a line of defense. With the addition of this group of people, the situation at the fissure quickly stabilized. After a few days, everything was arranged properly. Any insect that crawled out of the cracks would be killed by the cultivators at the two mountain passes. Even if there were Spirit Sea Realm insects, it would be the same. However, he did not see any dumb insects. It was rare to see more than 10 dumb insects appearing at the same time. Lin Yu looked for Lu Yi. "Fellow Taoist Lu, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip to the Dark Moon Forest Pass and set up a teleportation formation." "It's my duty." Lu Yi nodded. This was something that the two of them had agreed on before, so Lu Yi naturally wouldn't refuse. Without delay, he immediately set off for the Dark Moon Forest Pass. At the same time, Lin Yu sent a message to her doppelganger, Li Tai Bai, to inform him of this matter. She asked Li Tai Bai to find a suitable location to set up the teleportation formation. At the same time, they had to be wary of Lu Yi's secret tricks. It could not be said that the temporary cooperation between the two sects did not mean that they were not on guard. After all, they were in two different camps. If the insect disaster was solved, the situation would return to how it was before. Lin Yu was willing to trust Lu Yi, but it was hard to know what was in a person's heart. Everything had to be prepared. From this point of view, Lin Yu was quite competent as the mountain pass leader. After arriving at the Dark Moon Forest Pass, he met up with his clone. After choosing a location, they set up a teleportation formation that connected to the fissure. Lu Yi directly returned to the fissure through the formation. It only took him a little more than 2 hours. Could be said that he moved like the wind. The fissure, the source of the insect race, was suppressed. It was difficult for new insects to appear within 1,000 miles. Perhaps there were insects that escaped from other fissures. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations deep into the fissure. In the end, only a small number of insects wandered over. For a time, the two mountain passes' defenses were truly impenetrable. The soldiers no longer had to go out in groups to search for insects. They only had to stay at the fissure and wait for the insects to walk into the trap. This saved a lot of time and energy. After another month, after confirming that the situation had completely stabilized and that there would not be any major problems, Lu Yi went to find Lin Yu. "You want to go deep into the fissure?" Lin Yu looked at Lu Yi in shock. "That's right. I want to go in and take a look, so I'll have to trouble you here, fellow Taoist Lin. It's not safe to go deep into the fissure. Not to mention that the insect race is everywhere. The deeper you go, the stronger the magnetic field. It's extremely unfriendly to cultivators like us. In the past few years, whether it's your Grand Heaven Alliance or my myriad Devil Ridge, many great cultivators have gone deep into the fissure to investigate. However, they didn't find much. There are even precedents of death and injury. I have to go take a look myself. Maybe I'll find something." "Fellow Taoist Lu, you trust me so much?" Lin Yu looked at him in confusion. "If you leave, your startling Waves Lake Pass will be leaderless." Lu Yi glanced at her. "What can you do, fellow Taoist Lin? Kill them all? What good will it do to you and the Dark Moon Forest Pass? You'll have a blood feud for no reason. It'll just increase the pressure of defending against the insect race. I think that since our two sects have a good beginning, we can also have a good ending." Lin Yu was silent for a moment, then she nodded slightly. "I'm a woman, and I'm not as bold as you. I can only wish you a safe journey ahead. Fellow Taoist, please don't worry about the fissure. I don't dare to say that I can guarantee their safety, but if they encounter danger, I'll treat them equally." "Thank you." After the discussion, Lu Yi called Yu Huang over and told him his decision. Yu Huang hurriedly dissuaded him. "My lord, going deep into the fissure is no joke. It's filled with magnetic fields. The deeper you go, the more your cultivation will be suppressed. Why do you have to take this risk?" Lu Yi only called him over to remind him to listen to Lin Yu's arrangements after he left. He didn't call him over to dissuade him. Naturally, Lu Yi pretended not to hear him and continued to remind him. Yu Huang was secretly anxious, but he also knew that he couldn't dissuade him. After a short while, under the gazes of the cultivators on both sides, Lu Yi plunged into the fissure and soon disappeared. On his way down, some insectoids sensed his presence from time to time and tried to attack him, but they were all killed by Lu Yi. With his current cultivation, dealing with these normal insectoids was a piece of cake for him. He could even kill divine sea realm insectoids easily. Only those at the level of big insect could cause him some interference. As long as there weren't too many of them, he could deal with them. The deeper he went, the dimmer it became until he couldn't see any light at all. Fortunately, he had now reached the divine sea realm, so as long as his divine sense remained, he could even close his eyes. He had asked the sect master about the situation below the fissure before. Because the sect master had explored the fissure before, Lu Yi wasn't completely ignorant. He just wanted to come in and see for himself because he had some methods that others didn't have. Perhaps they could play some unexpected role. Lu Yi moved through the fissure without any obstruction. When he reached a depth of 10,000 feet, Lu Yi felt the spiritual power in his body become slightly condensed, but the situation was very slight. If he didn't look carefully, he wouldn't have noticed it. Usually, this situation was caused by the accumulation of pill toxins in a cultivator's body. They only needed to find a way to neutralize the pill toxins. Naturally, Lu Yi didn't have any pill toxins in his body. The reason for this was that at this depth, there was already a faint magnetic field enveloping him. The magnetic field was an invisible and formless existence, and could be said to be the nemesis of cultivators. Before Lu Yi had opened his spiritual cavities, he had used the magnetic field to kill a steward of Evil Moon Valley, and from then on, he had embarked on the path of cultivation. It was precisely because of the magnetic field that the steward's spiritual power couldn't circulate. Of course, that was also because the steward was too weak. If his cultivation had been a bit higher, it would have been hard to say who would have won. As he continued down, the magnetic field grew thicker and thicker, and the condensed situation in Lu Ye's body also deepened. He could clearly feel that there was a layer of invisible power blocking the flow of his spiritual power. This reduced the strength he could bring to bear, but fortunately, it wasn't too serious. Lu Yi continued down until he reached the third level. Chapter 1092. Breakthrough deep in the fissure at 3,000 meters, Lu Ye's cultivation had been suppressed to the level of the early Divine Sea Realm. If he continued down, he would inevitably fall below the Divine Sea Realm, which was undoubtedly very dangerous for him. It was also at this depth that Lu Yi finally found a huge passage. According to the sect master, this was the insect path. The insect race came out from an unknown depth and crawled out along the insect path, then rushed into the 9 regions from the cracks in the ground to wreak havoc. Almost every crack had an insect path at different depths, but most of them were around 3,000 meters. So logically speaking, as long as one followed the insect path all the way down, they would definitely be able to find the location of the insect nest. At that time, they would only need to deal with the insect nest and solve the problem from the source. Unfortunately, so far, the Divine Sea Realm cultivators of the 2 camps of the 9 regions had not been able to go deep enough. This was a dead end because the deeper they went, the less strength they could bring to bear. Even if it was a powerhouse like the sect master, if they really reached the location of the insect nest, how much strength could they bring to bear? This was also the fundamental reason why the insect disaster had been unresolved for several years. If the insect nest was in a location that was easy to reach, it would have been eradicated by the 9 regions cultivators. Lu Yi didn't rashly go deep into the insect path. At this position, there were already a lot of insect race members, and there was no lack of Divine Sea Realm insect race members. He killed his way here, and his spiritual power could quickly recover, but the physical strength he consumed was real. So he had to make sure that he had the means to protect himself when he encountered danger. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Chapter 1092. Breakthrough deep into the crack. Chapter 1093. Standing at the entrance of the tunnel, Lu Yi summoned the Dragon Emperor. Amidst a series of explosions, a tall figure appeared with the Dragon Emperor draped over his body. The obscure feeling of spiritual energy circulating in his body disappeared in an instant, and he was able to circulate it freely again. His suppressed cultivation was also restored. Lu Yi was relieved. The reason why he insisted on exploring the fissure was not on a whim, but because he had a certain level of confidence, and this confidence came from the Dragon Emperor. The reason why something invisible like the metamagnetic field could interfere with the flow of spiritual energy in a cultivator's body was because the field invaded the cultivator's body, forming an invisible obstacle. If the spiritual energy in a cultivator's body was compared to a flowing river, then the obstacles formed by the metamagnetic field were like dams. It was because of these dams that the flow of spiritual energy in a cultivator's body was affected. It was actually very simple to solve this problem. All he had to do was block the erosion of the metamagnetic field. However, it was easier said than done. Cultivators usually did not have such a method. The Dragon Emperor could. This full-body armor wrapped Lu Yi tightly, completely blocking the erosion of the metamagnetic field. Naturally, it would not affect him at all. However, Lu Yi could not maintain the Dragon Emperor's armor forever. This thing consumed too much of his body, so he only summoned it now to test it out. After confirming that his idea was feasible, Lu Yi hurriedly put away the Dragon Emperor. This was his guarantee to enter the tunnel, and he would not use it unless he had no other choice. Moreover, the Dragon Emperor's aura was too fierce. When it was activated, spiritual energy fluctuated, and it was very attractive to the insect tribe. Wearing the Dragon Emperor in a place like the tunnel was like lighting a lamp in the dark. It would definitely attract the insect tribe nearby. Take this moment for example. A large number of insect tribe members were already attracted. The sound of merciful movements came from the depths of the tunnel, and a complicated aura kept approaching. Lu Yi blocked the exit of the tunnel and swung his sword to kill the enemies. The scene was very intense. Half a day later, the number of attacking insect tribe members gradually decreased. When Lu Yi had time, he tried to activate the power of the talent tree. The talent tree was an extremely mysterious thing. In the past, he had repeatedly borrowed the power of the talent tree to resist the scorching energy, but he didn't know if it could resist the corrosion of the magnetism field. With a thought, the surface of his body was immediately covered by short roots that could not be seen with the naked eye. The obscurity of his spiritual energy improved slightly, but it was not complete. From the looks of it, the power of the talent tree could resist the corrosion of the magnetic field to a certain extent, but it was not as perfect as wearing the Dragon Emperor. This might have something to do with the talent tree's transformation. Up until now, the talent tree had only undergone one transformation, but Lu Yi could feel that this was not the limit of the talent tree. If there was enough energy, the talent tree would undergo another transformation at a certain time. Perhaps after a few more conversions, the power of the talent tree would be able to completely isolate the corrosion of the metamagnetic field, but it was not possible for now. Lu Yi wasn't too disappointed. He was already very satisfied with such a harvest. Now that he had a way to save his life, it was time to get down to business. Lu Yi stared at an insectoid. This insectoid looked like a sacred beetle, but it was extremely large, and its aura was not weak. Since entering the fissure until now, this was the most powerful insectoid he had encountered. It was only one step away from becoming a big insectoid. Lu Yi didn't kill it not because he couldn't kill it, but because he had other uses for it. The insectoid's attack method was relatively simple. Generally, they used their body's advantages. For example, this sacred beetle only knew how to wriggle its mouth to bite and use its sharp legs to stab. Lu Yi dodged the attacks of other insectoids and turned around to ride on the back of this sacred beetle. He raised his hand and pressed it on the head, his spiritual energy surging. An invisible force swept out in all directions. All the insectoids in the vicinity stiffened slightly. The insectoids that were not strong enough were directly knocked unconscious. In an instant the scene was clear. However, Lu Yi could feel the resistance from the sacred beetle. It was true that the insectoids had low intelligence, but every creature had spiritual energy at birth. Even a newborn baby had its own spiritual energy, not to mention this insectoid that was comparable to the divine sea realm. Its spiritual energy wasn't weak, but it didn't know how to use it. The resistance came from the sacred beetle's spiritual energy. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Insect Path. What Lu Yi needed to do now was to tear apart the sacred beetle's spiritual energy in the shortest time possible. The impact of the spiritual energy was like a tidal wave, wave after wave. After 3 waves, Lu Yi finally felt the resistance from the sacred beetle dissipating. This meant that the sacred beetle's spiritual energy had been destroyed. Lu Yi immediately activated his spiritual energy. A moment later, the sacred beetle gradually calmed down. The insectoids that had regained their senses also slowly calmed down. Driven by their instincts, they crawled out. Only the sacred beetle changed its direction and retreated along the path it came from. On the sacred beetle's back, Lu Yi activated the concealment and aura concealment spirit runes to enhance his body. He hid under the sacred beetle's wings, not revealing any aura. The insect path was dark. As long as he didn't reveal his aura and hid like this, he wouldn't be discovered by the other insectoid. He didn't know if the Divine Sea Realm cultivators who explored the fissure in the past had thought of this method. However, if he wanted to use this method, he first needed to have the means to control the insectoid. This alone would be a problem for 99% of the people. Even if some beast-taming school cultivators could use special means to control the insectoids, they couldn't perfectly hide their body and aura for a long time. Therefore, Lu Yi estimated that in the entire 9 provinces, he was probably the only one who could use this method to explore the insectoid nest. Lu Yi couldn't help but feel a heavy burden on his shoulders. All the insectoids were crawling out, but the sacred beetle's behavior was a little strange. Fortunately, it was an insectoid with low intelligence. Therefore, no insectoids cared even if it was strange. If it was a human doing this, he would definitely be stopped and questioned. The insect path didn't lead to the depths of the underground in a straight line. Instead, it turned and turned. The space inside the insect path was also different in size. The wide space could allow more than 10 insectoids to pass together, while the narrow space could only allow 1 or 2 insectoids to pass through. Lu Yi only maintained the minimum level of spreading his spiritual force to check the surroundings. His main goal was to explore the path. Otherwise, if he let the sacred beetle act freely, who knew where it would bring him? There were many forks in the insect path, which were clearly opened by the insectoids. The insectoids were quite good at opening up passages underground. Almost all of them were born with this ability. Nevertheless, because they followed the principle of exploring downward, although there were many forks, they wouldn't get lost. Lu Yi vaguely felt that if he followed those forks all the way up, different forks should correspond to different locations of the fissure. There was no light in the surroundings. In this dark environment, even the flow of time became very blurry. There was only the sound of insectoids crawling around and the strange sound of their mouths moving. The entire insect path was filled with the aura of various insectoids. Lu Yi originally thought that this trip would be boring and wouldn't have any twists and turns. However, walking in the dark too often meant that he would eventually encounter a ghost. When a dog insect passed by the sacred beetle, it suddenly stopped and turned to stare at the sacred beetle. Following that, a low roar came from its throat. The insectoids in the surroundings seemed to have received some kind of order. They all stopped and gathered around the sacred beetle. Lu Yi immediately understood that he had been exposed. Without any hesitation, he directly jumped off the sacred beetle's back. Before he landed, he had already summoned the Dragon Emperor. He didn't know how deep he was at this moment because the path was full of twists and turns. There was no way for him to calculate the depth, but the magnetic field at this location was very dense. It was so dense that he only had half of his strength left. With this kind of strength, in this kind of environment, he could only summon the Dragon Emperor to fight. The moment the Dragon Emperor appeared, his body swayed, and he directly rushed to the dog insect's side. The dragon's spine saber slashed down. The dog insect clearly didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen. By the time the saber landed, it was already too late for it to dodge. The sharp saber split the dog insect's body into 2, and dark green insect blood splattered everywhere. In any case, it was a big insect. If it was a head-on fight, Lu Yi would have to expend some effort. However, under the sudden attack, he took its life with a single strike. In the darkness, 2 scarlet streams of light dragged out from his eye sockets. They drifted about, bringing about a wind of death. In just 5 breaths of time, the flowing light dissipated, and the surroundings were filled with nothing but dust. Chapter 1093. Mysterious Beetle Insect Path. It was the corpse of an insectoid. Only the sacred beetle stood there in a daze. Lu Yi hurriedly dispelled the dragon emperor and rushed to the dog insect's corpse. He circulated his spirit energy and wrapped up a large amount of insect blood, drenching himself in it. In the end, he was still careless. He could use spirit runes to conceal his body and aura, but he couldn't hide his scent. Just now, when the dog insect brushed past the sacred beetle, it had clearly sniffed it. This was also the reason why he was exposed. The dog insect had smelled the scent of a human. The insect blood was sticky, and the feeling of smearing it on his body was very uncomfortable. However, at this time, he couldn't care too much. When Lu Yi returned to the sacred beetle's back and hid under its wings, more insectoids gathered from the 2 ends of the insect path. Clearly, they had sensed the spirit energy fluctuation just now and ran over to investigate. However, they only saw a large number of their dead companions. Their low intelligence didn't allow them to understand what had happened. After a while, the insectoids slowly dispersed. The sacred beetle had already left the battlefield and continued to go deeper. Lu Yi discovered something very interesting. After he bathed himself in the blood of the hound bug, the suppression of the magnetism field on his body seemed to have lessened. Originally, he felt that his strength had been suppressed by about half. However, this suppression was clearly weakened to a certain extent. This unintentional discovery made Lu Yi excited. The insect's blood could actually block the corrosion of the magnetic field? Although it couldn't completely block it, the weakening effect was obvious. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Chapter 1093. Mysterious Beetle Insect Path. Chapter 1094. This was a very valuable piece of information, especially for the current 9 prefectures. The insect blood concealed its human scent, the concealment and aura concealment spiritual inscriptions concealed its body and aura, and it hid under the sacred beetle's wings. Only then could the concealment be considered perfect. The journey was smooth and there were no more traces left behind. However, some insects would still look at the sacred beetle in confusion. After all, they were more intelligent, so they were puzzled by the sacred beetle's actions. However, that was all. This kind of operation was very boring. Lu Yi could only guide the sacred beetle when they encountered a fork in the road so that it wouldn't go astray. Fortunately, he had other ways to pass the time, such as checking on the situation of his clone. His clone was now guarding the crack in the earth, so it could be considered that he had switched shifts with Lin Yu. Just like how Lin Yu was wary of him, how could he not be wary of Lin Yu? No matter how nice her words sounded, when there was real danger, Lin Yu couldn't be impartial. After all, she was from the Myriad Demon's Ridge. Therefore, his clone volunteered to switch positions with Lin Yu. Lin Yu had no objections and quickly returned to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. With Li Taibai's clone guarding the crack in the earth, there were nearly 500 cultivators from the 2 clans. In addition, there were various defensive lines constructed by formations. Although the defense wasn't impregnable, as long as they didn't encounter a large-scale insect tide like last time, they could handle it. The cultivators from the 2 clans also tasted the benefit. In the past, they had to form groups to search for insects and obtain battle merit. This was not only inefficient, but it was also easy to encounter danger. For example, if they encountered a divine ocean realm insect that was difficult to deal with, they would have to send a message to their own mountain pass leader to come and save the day. If the mountain pass leader was free and came in time, their lives wouldn't be in danger. However, if the mountain pass leader wasn't free or came late, death and injury were inevitable. Now, they didn't have to worry about this. They just had to wait at the crack in the earth. Occasionally, a divine ocean realm insect would come out, but they would be killed by the cultivators. When there were no insect attacks, they could even meditate and cultivate. However, because of the constant conflict, the cultivators from the two clans didn't integrate perfectly. They were separated by the crack in the earth and could be considered to be very distinct. This was already a very rare collaboration. The upper echelons of the two camps had already noticed this cooperation model and had sent their own experts to investigate the cooperation situation at the two mountain passes. It was said that the upper echelons of the two camps intended to promote this cooperation model, but it would take time. In the depths of Insect Path, Lu Ye's days were dull and boring. He just had to control the scarabs to travel and travel. Because of the distance between them, his strength was constantly suppressed. Now, his strength was suppressed to the point where he could only unleash the power of the spirit stream tier. Such suppression was so terrifying that Lu Yi even suspected that if he continued to go deeper, the spiritual energy in his body would be completely imprisoned. At that time, the concealment and aura-concealing spirit tattoos he had cast on his body would lose their effect, and he would not be able to go deeper. He was secretly anxious. He had already gone down who knew how many kilometers underground. So far, other than discovering that the insect blood could weaken the corrosion of the magnetic field, there were no other valuable discoveries. He didn't know if it would be useful to continue like this, but since he had already reached this point, he could only continue to persevere. At the very least, he had to persevere until he could no longer continue. A faint light suddenly entered his eyes. It was extremely dazzling in the darkness. Lu Yi was stunned. He had been in the insect path for more than 10 days. He had always been in a dark environment. Moreover, he was already very deep underground. Where was the light coming from? There were insectoids all around, so it wasn't convenient for him to probe around in case he exposed himself. He could only control the sacred beetle to continue forward. The light grew brighter and brighter. Only when the sacred beetle reached the source of the light did Lu Yi see the scene in front of him. He could not help but be absent-minded. What entered their eyes was an oval-shaped luminous object that was nearly 33 meters tall and several meters wide. It stood quietly at the deepest part of the insect path. The luminous object's surface was blurry like an uneven mirror. Insects kept coming out of the mirror to join the army that crawled out of the insect path. Every time an insectoid crawled out of the mirror would vanish into thin air. Chapter 1094 Warbug Race Mystic Realm. There would be a slight ripple. Door. There was actually a door in the deepest part of the insect path. Lu Yi had entered and exited various small secret realms many times, so he was naturally no stranger to portals, so he recognized what this thing was at a glance. However, why was there a door here? He originally thought that the deepest part of the insect path would be connected to an insectoid nest. However, he didn't expect to see a door instead of an insectoid nest. The question was, where did this door lead to? What puzzled Lu Yi the most was, how did this door form? Did it exist from the beginning? It didn't seem like it. If that was the case, the insectoid plague would have already swept through the 9 provinces. In other words, this door must have appeared a few years ago along with the earthquake that swept through the 9 provinces. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of place was behind the door, but it was most likely where the insectoid nest was located. This was because there was an endless stream of insectoids crawling out of the door. Behind the door must be the source of the insectoid plague. Lu Yi suddenly felt like he had touched upon the truth of an extremely secretive matter. He dispelled the distracting thoughts in his mind and gave the sacred beetle an order. The sacred beetle stepped forward and walked towards the door. He wanted to go in and take a look. He wanted to see what kind of place the door led to. Light shone brightly as he entered. Since entering the insect path, he had been affected by the invasive derivative of the magnetic field. His spiritual power was completely restored at this moment. In other words, there was no more magnetic field here. This was obviously not the depths of the underground. Looking up, His field of vision was densely packed with insectoid. There were so many of them that it was even more terrifying than the largest insectoid tide he had ever seen. They were everywhere in the sky and on the ground. Lu Yi hid himself even deeper. In the insect path, if his whereabouts were exposed, he might have a chance to use the Dragon Emperor to kill his way out of the encirclement and return to the surface. However, if his whereabouts were exposed in a place like this, the outcome that awaited him was definitely not good. Now, there were two choices in front of him. One was to retreat from the door. Because the door was behind him, he could return to the original insect path by taking a step back. The second was to continue investigating. Lu Yi naturally wouldn't retreat. He had already come this far. There was no reason to give up halfway. There were so many divine ocean realm cultivators in the 9 provinces who had been searching for the source of the insectoid plague, but to no avail. He had finally come here, so of course he had to take a look. However, he didn't act immediately. Instead, he began to investigate the situation of his clone. With a thought, he could still sense everything on the clone's side. There was no obstruction. Looking at the battlefield imprint, he could also contact others. This meant that he was most likely still in the 9 provinces. Of course, it was also possible that he wasn't in the 9 provinces. Because the door was always open, his connection with his clone wouldn't be cut off. The battlefield imprint could also be used. The only thing he could be sure of was that this was the range of the 9 provinces' heaven's secrets. Unlike the blood refinement world, where even the battlefield imprint couldn't be detected, this made Lu Yi feel more at ease. As long as he was still in the range of heaven's secrets, there wouldn't be a big problem. There were too many insectoids on the ground. The entire world seemed to be filled with insectoid. Although the sacred beetle wasn't small, there were countless insectoids that were larger than it. As it charged back and forth, the sacred beetle's wings trembled. Lu Yi hurriedly controlled the sacred beetle to fly into the sky. Firstly, he could avoid a large number of insectoid. Secondly, he could only see further by standing at a high altitude. He really wanted to see what kind of world this was. As he continued to fly higher, there were fewer and fewer insectoids around him. Only when the sacred beetle could no longer fly higher did Lu Yi sneak a peek. First, he looked at the sky. There were many flying insectoids in his field of vision. Each of them had a fierce aura, but compared to the insectoids on the ground, there were far fewer of them. Moreover, the sacred beetle flew high enough, so he could avoid being exposed to a large extent. In addition, the concealment and aura concealment spirit runes were maintained. As long as Lu Yi didn't make too much of a commotion, he wouldn't attract the insectoids' attention. Looking down, there was an endless sea of insectoids. They filled this world in layers. In the distance, there seemed to be a towering hill. Even further away, there seemed to be an even greater number of insectoids. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin, the insectoid race's great secret realm. In this position, there were even more hills and hills. Lu Yi saw incomparably large and ferocious creatures baring their fangs and brandishing their claws on the ground. This was an insectoid he had never seen before. Just looking at it from afar, it gave off an extremely strong sense of oppression. One could imagine how strong it was. Lu Yi suddenly remembered that when he returned to the 9 states from the blood-refining realm, he had seen many floating continents in the periphery of the 9 states world. At that time, he had guessed that those floating continents were connected to the various secret realms of the 9 state. It must have included the realm of beasts, the soaring dragon realm, and other places he had been to before. At that time, he had caught a glimpse of a ferocious and terrifying insectoid figure on one of the larger floating continents. However, because he had rushed into the 9 states world quickly, he hadn't been able to see it clearly. Now, it seemed that he hadn't seen wrongly at that time. Was his current location the huge floating continent he had seen at that time? This should also be a secret realm belonging to the 9 states world. However, the scale was so huge that it could no longer be described as a small secret realm. This was a huge secret realm belonging to the insectoids. The insectoids had always existed in the Nine States world. Lu Yi had encountered an insectoid tide in the spirit stream battlefield. At that time, he had been very puzzled as to where those insectoids had come from. Now, it seemed that the source should be here. The insectoid tide in the spirit stream battlefield was a test of the spirit stream realm cultivators by the Nine States world's secret. At the same time, it was also a kind of reward because killing insectoids could earn 1 merit point. It could be said that the appearance of the insectoid tide in the spirit stream battlefield was most likely controlled by the secrets of the heavens. If that was the case, then what about the insectoid tide in the Nine States this time? Please enter the latest update in your browser. Chapter 1094. Insectoid Tide Insectoid Race Great Secret Realm. Chapter 1095. The truth behind the insect plague was worth pondering. Perhaps some things were not as simple as they seemed on the surface. At the very least, to hatch such a large number of insects, it would require an astonishing amount of energy and resources. Where would the energy come from? Where would the resources come from? There was not much life in this world. At the very least, from what Lu Yi could see, there was nothing useful to the insects. With a thought, he commanded the sacred beetle to fly close to the edge of this world. Since this was a world like a secret realm, it naturally had an edge. It was unlike the Nine States, which was a huge celestial body. No matter which direction one went, one would eventually return to the starting point one day. Similar to the many small secret realms Lu Yi had been to, the edge of this big secret realm was filled with chaos and nothingness. It gave off an extremely ominous feeling. Even the insects were unwilling to approach it. He had just observed that the door to this place stood at the edge. The sacred beetle's flying speed was still very fast. After all, its strength was not weak. Lu Yi stuck close to the sacred beetle's back and looked down from time to time. Soon, his gaze was attracted to a towering hill on the left. He had seen the hill when he first came in, but only now did he realize that it was not a hill at all, but a huge insect nest. Lu Yi had never observed an insect nest from this angle. Although he had entered an insect nest in the spirit stream battlefield, he had been deep inside the nest. He had no idea what it looked like from the outside. The shape of the entire insect nest was like a hill-shaped sarcoma. The sarcoma was densely packed with large and small holes, making it look like a beehive. Insects were constantly crawling out of this beehive sarcoma. There was more than one such beehive sarcoma in his field of vision. Lu Yi looked up and saw many hill-like things. They were undoubtedly insect nests standing on this land. These insectoid nests were the reason for the insectoids' massive numbers and size. They were also the source of the insectoid plague. If the cultivators of the Nine States could find a way to kill their way into this big secret realm, they would naturally be able to solve the insect plague. However, the key problem now was that it was extremely difficult to enter. Lu Yi himself had entered, but that was because he had used the soul manipulation rune to control the insects. In addition, he had excellent concealment skills. However, it was not so easy to bring people in. Moreover, given the environment here, a small number of people would not help at all. At the very least, an army would be needed to get rid of the insects here. Lu Yi had never seen insectoids killing each other in the 9 provinces. At most, those insectoids would eat the corpses of their dead companions. However, in this great secret realm, the insectoids did not get along peacefully. Fighting and killing were almost everywhere. The corpses of the dead insectoids were eaten by the survivors and turned into powerful resources for the survivors. This was probably the reason why the insectoids were able to give birth to so many powerful existences. They constantly devoured their companions to strengthen themselves, becoming stronger bit by bit, or becoming food for even more powerful beings. The reason why they couldn't be seen in the 9 regions was probably because there were better things that attracted them, which made them suppress their instinct to kill each other. For example, the fluctuation of spiritual energy or the vitality of humans. During this period of time, the sacred beetle was targeted by a ferocious insect. That insect was definitely at the level of a large insect. Regardless of whether it was its size or strength, it was stronger than the sacred beetle. In a panic, Lu Yi secretly blessed the sacred beetle with a wind travel spirit rune. Only then was he able to escape. He broke out in a cold sweat. In this place, if he did not have the sacred beetle's cover, once he was exposed, he would definitely die without a burial place. Even bringing out the Dragon Emperor would be useless. He continued to fly, not daring to go too deep into the center. The closer he went to the center, the more insects there were. On the contrary, because of the instinctive fear of the chaotic nothingness, not many insectoids approached the edge, which made Lu Ye's situation safer. During this period of time, Lu Yi observed more than a dozen huge insectoid nests and several ferocious and terrifying giant insects. Those giant insects had the ability to overturn rivers and seas. Even the top divine sea realm cultivators in the 9 regions would not be a match for them. If he wanted to defeat such giant insects, he could only win by relying on numbers. After a few hours, a light came into view below, attracting Lu Ye's attention. When he looked down, he could not help but be startled. This was because the source of the light was actually another door. Although Lu Yi was not very familiar with this large secret realm, since he was already here, his sense of direction was not a problem. Therefore, he was completely certain that this door was not the one he had entered from, but another. He was a little surprised, but after thinking about it carefully, he quickly felt relieved. The 9 regions was enormous, and there were countless fissures in the ground and insect paths. Even if he went deeper, the frequency of insect paths converging would increase. In the end, it was impossible for them to connect to the same place. This meant that this great secret realm had more than one door to the 9 regions. As for how many there were, he did not know. Lu Yi really wanted to know where this second door was connected to. After thinking about it, he ordered the sacred beetle to fly down, and a moment later, he squeezed through the swarm of insects and crossed the door. That familiar feeling of being suppressed by the magnetic field once again made Lu Ye's spirit chi circulation become incomparably sluggish. Fortunately, he had been prepared, otherwise, his aura would have been exposed. Lu Yi quickly took out the 10-point map and compared it with his current location. He quickly determined that his current location was actually in the Thunder region. However, because he was too deep underground, the markings on the map were not obvious. As for where exactly he was in the Thunder region, he did not know. He hurriedly put away the 10-point map and ordered the sacred beetle to return to the insect race's great secret realm through the door. It took a lot of effort to travel in the opposite direction, but he finally returned. Just like before, he immediately rose into the air and continued to investigate. Sure enough, after a few hours, Lu Yi saw the third door. In the next few days, Lu Yi ordered the sacred beetle to explore this place. When he first returned to the 9 regions from the blood refinement realm, such a great secret realm did not look too big from afar. It was just one of the larger floating continents, but when he actually entered it, he understood how vast it was. It was about the size of a continent. In other words, the size of this great secret realm was basically comparable to the Spirit Stream battlefield. The number of doors was very thought-provoking. There were exactly 9 of them. Every time Lu Yi passed by a door, he would go in and out once to confirm his position. The 9 doors corresponded to the 9 continents of the 9 regions. If this was a coincidence, it was too much of a coincidence. Lu Yi faintly saw some mysterious and profound methods. However, he could not figure out why for the time being. A few days after entering the insect race's great secret realm, Lu Yi returned to the door he had entered from. The situation of this great secret realm had basically been explored. It could be said that he had gained a lot. Lu Yi did not want to destroy those insect nests and solve the current predicament of the 9 regions by himself. That was not reality. An individual's strength was ultimately limited. In this calamity that was sweeping through the 9 regions, only the cultivators of the 9 regions working together could overcome this crisis. In a sense, this matter was a crisis, but it was also an opportunity to change the situation that had been maintained for thousands of years between the 2 factions of the 9 regions. At the very least, the 2 factions had stopped fighting. Thinking of this, Lu Yi seemed to understand something. He ordered the sacred beetle to enter the door and leave the insect race's great secret realm. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. When a person was in the insect race's great secret realm, they were really walking on the edge of life and death. Once exposed, they would not have a good ending. Now that they had come out, they could control their own fate. However, Lu Yi could not show himself for the time being. He could only continue to hide under the sacred beetle's wings and let it crawl out along the insect path. He originally wanted to go back the way he came, but there were too many forks in the road ahead. How could he go back the way he came? In any case, no matter which path he took, he would eventually return to the surface, so he might as well just leave it to fate. He just had to be careful not to run into the myriad Devil Ridge's territory. The 2 factions were indeed not fighting, but they were clearly separated. If he appeared in the myriad Devil Ridge's territory at this time, it was very likely that some misunderstandings would occur. For this reason, he had no choice but to take out the map from time to time and use it to determine his approximate location. It was another difficult journey. It was not until 10 days later that Lu Ye's cultivation had recovered to 70% that he came out from under the sacred beetle's wings. With a thought, the sacred beetle suddenly stopped breathing and crawled on the ground. Lu Yi raised his hand and shot out a fire phoenix. The raging flames wrapped around the sacred beetle and quickly burned it to ashes. He drew his saber and rushed forward along the insect path. Along the way, there were insects that sensed the fluctuations of spiritual power and turned back to block him, but they all died. He charged and killed along the way. When he could no longer feel the suppression of the magnetic field, he finally rushed out of the insect path and entered the fissure. His figure soared into the sky, and saber light wantonly swept out. The light above his head became more and more obvious. Finally, at a certain moment, he got rid of the darkness and saw the light. Lu Yi let out a long breath. Although this trip to the insect race's great secret realm was not thrilling, his nerves had not relaxed since he went deep underground. Especially after he really entered the insect race's great secret realm, the month-long journey made even him feel exhausted. The main reason was that the sacred beetle's crawling speed was not fast enough, especially when he was moving in the opposite direction of the insect race. Sometimes, he would be knocked back by more powerful insects. Otherwise, it would not have taken so long. However, he had gained a lot from this trip. At the very least, he had figured out the situation inside the insect race's great secret realm. Now, as long as he could solve the problem of how to resist the suppression of the magnetic field and weaken his strength, the cultivators of the 9 regions could mobilize their armies and kill their way into the insect race's great secret realm. At that time, with the powerful foundation of the cultivation world of the 9 regions, it would not be difficult to solve the insect disaster. Chapter 1096. There were no cultivators guarding the fissures he came out of. Cultivators who were qualified to guard an earth fissure had to be at least in the Divine Sea Realm, and they had to be at least in the 3rd Order Divine Sea Realm, because only cultivators at this level had a chance of escaping from the giant insect. If a true Lake Realm cultivator was asked to guard the fissures, if a dumb insect appeared, they wouldn't be able to escape and would lose manpower for nothing. Therefore, even though there were many cultivators in the Spirit Sea Realm in the 9 continents, not every fissure was guarded by a cultivator in the Spirit Sea Realm. Only the bigger fisher would send cultivators in the spirit sea realm. If the fisher wasn't big, they could only let it happen. There was nothing they could do about it. Lu Yi took out the 10 points map to check his location. Not bad, he didn't appear in the territory of Myriad Demon Ridge. He was still in the Weapon Province. His current location wasn't too far from Grand Sky City. With his speed, he could arrive there in less than an hour. Lu Yi determined the direction and flew towards Grand Sky City while sending a message to the sect master. This time, he went deep into the insect race's mystic realm and obtained a lot of useful information. He had to report it to the sect master. As far as he knew, the sect master's current task was to explore the depths of the fissures. In recent years, the old man had gone deep into the fissures and killed his way into the insect path no less than hundreds of times. Unfortunately, he returned empty-handed every time. Soon, he received a reply that the sect master was not in Grand Sky City. He was chasing after a few dumb insects that escaped from the fissures. However, the battle was coming to an end and would end soon. Go back to Grand Sky City and wait for me. The sect master didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew that if it wasn't something particularly important, his disciple would send messages to him at will. Lu Yi received the order and continued to fly towards Grand Sky City. After an hour, he entered the city. Instead of returning to his small courtyard, he went to the sect master's office and waited quietly. After another half an hour, a stream of light swept in from outside the city and landed straight in the courtyard, revealing the sect master's figure. Lu Yi saluted. "Sect master." The sect master stretched out his hand and stroked his beard, looking at him with gratification. He couldn't help but feel a little emotional. In a trance, the little brother that he unintentionally took in had grown to such a degree. It could be said that this was definitely the fastest growing brother since the establishment of the Blue Blood sect. Even in the entire history of the 9 regions, there was almost no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Some of his special experiences were even strange to an experienced warrior at the spirit sea realm like him. However, there were always demons in troubled times. Especially in the current situation, the rapid rise of the sect's disciples had undoubtedly revealed something. Standing higher, he could see further. He could vaguely sense many things that Lu Yi could not detect. He brought Lu Yi into the house, and Lu Yi skillfully took out a tea set to boil some tea. Only then did the sect leader ask, "Is everything fine at the pass recently?" "Not bad." Lu Yi's head was lowered, and his doppelganger was sitting on the ground. The cultivators at the 2 mountain passes could be considered to be working together for the time being. Whenever an insect crawled out of the ground, it was immediately killed. During this period, there were even 2 instances where a giant insect appeared, but it did not even have the chance to make a splash before it was instantly killed by countless attacks. This was the benefit of setting up a formation at the fissure. They could get rid of some of the more troublesome races immediately. Otherwise, if those large insects were to come out of the fissure, they would have to send out the deity Ocean to hunt them down, which would be very troublesome. "Did anyone find trouble with you?" the headmaster asked again. "No, this disciple is an honest and dutiful person. I have never made enemies with anyone. How could anyone find trouble with me? No, this disciple is an honest and dutiful person. I have never made enemies with anyone. How could anyone find trouble with me?" The corner of the headmaster's eyes twitched. There were many suspicious points about Lu Yuemei's death. After all, she was a 7th-order divine sea realm cultivator. She was not weak, so how could she die for no reason? Even if she really encountered a difficult opponent or insect race, at least she could send a message before she died. But in fact, before Lu Yuemei's death, no one received any news. This was the biggest doubt. As for whether it was his disciple who killed her or not, the headmaster did not know, and he would not ask. But after Lu Yuemei's death, it was a fact that Lu Yi appeared near Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Whether it was Lu Yi or Li Bai, It was also a fact that both of them had a grudge against Lu Yueme. It was also a fact that the two heroes of War Province had joined forces and cooperated very well. They could kill several large insects together, so it was not necessarily impossible for them to kill Lu Yueme. But what exactly had they done to prevent Lu Yueme from sending a message? No one knew. Of course, from the standpoint of the headmaster, Lu Yueme's death was not a big deal. That woman was not a good thing, so he immediately sent a message to Thought Moon Immortal. Chapter 1096 Death. The Headmaster's Shock, a gentle reminder. To prevent incomplete content and text from being out of order, please do not use the browser app reading mode. She went to report to Yu Huajin, but as a result, Thought Moon Immortal took half of Yu Huajin's life. There was no need to tell this to this disciple. It would only cause more trouble. Now that you're the master of a pass, it's not good for you to run around. Plus, you're responsible for making the explosive fire spiritual rock and the formation board. The formation board has been popularized in the military province, but the other 8 provinces still need it. The Haotian Alliance is a whole, so it's not good for us to neglect the others. Pang Zhen has been under a lot of pressure recently. Now that you have the ability, you should help the alliance. Lu Yi answered respectfully. That is why I went to the depths of the fissure a few days ago to investigate the situation. Cough, cough. The headmaster almost choked himself to death with a mouthful of tea. He put down the teacup and scolded with a straight face, nonsense. There are many dangers in the depths of the fissure. Even I do not dare to go there casually. How can you take such a risk? As if he felt that his tone was a little harsh, he said gently, Yi, you are still young. You have a bright future ahead of you. Don't go to places that are too dangerous. It is enough for old men like us to explore the depths of the fissure, but it is not easy for us to go there. Lu Yi kept nodding his head and agreed. Seeing him like this, the headmaster knew that he did not listen to him. But then again, if this disciple was really an obedient child who listened to everything the elders said, he probably would not have achieved what he had today. Cultivators were a group of people who did not know their place. The more capable they were, the more restless they would be. Did you find anything? The headmaster asked casually. Lu Yi quickly took out a few shadow recording stones and handed them to the headmaster. I found something. Please take a look at it. The headmaster took it and casually picked up one of the stones. He immersed his divine consciousness in it to investigate. He did not think too much because Lu Ye's strength was obvious. Even if he went deep into the fissure, what valuable discovery could he find? But after all, this was brought back by his disciple who risked his life. As the headmaster, he had to take a look at it. However, when he began to investigate the images in the shadow recording stone, his expression changed and he sat up straight. It was because that shocking scene was something he had never seen before. There was an overwhelming swarm of insects, a shadowy hill-like insect nest, and an oval-shaped door that emitted light. Each of them brought a huge impact to the headmaster's mind. He suddenly raised his eyes and looked at Lu Yi in surprise. Yi, this is... Lu Ye's expression was solemn. This place, I call it the insect race's great realm. These scenes are all from there. The insect race's secret realm. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. The headmaster's face was undeniable. You found the source of the insect disaster. How did you do it? He had been going deep into the fissure for the past few years to find the head of the insects, but he had never succeeded. The deeper he went, the more his cultivation was suppressed. When he encountered powerful insects, he could only temporarily retreat. He did not expect that this disciple of his sect would actually do what he could not do. This time, not only did he lose, but all the old fellows in the entire state were also defeated. He did not have any other thoughts. He only felt gratified that his disciple was so promising. What Lu Yi could do, his method could be used as a reference. If it could be popularized, then the biggest problem in the 9 regions would be solved. Lu Yi explained. This disciple has some special means to control the insects, so I found a way to control a divine sea realm insect and hid on its back. It took me all the way to the end of the insect path. The headmaster also knew that this disciple was a spiritual tattooist, so he blessed himself with concealment and aura-concealing spiritual tattoos, and smeared insect blood on his body to hide his aura. The trip was daunting but not dangerous. The headmaster immediately understood that Lu Ye's method could not be imitated by others. Now, the people who explored the fissure in the 9 regions were basically divided into 3 factions: body cultivators, ghost cultivators, and beast taming school cultivators. Body cultivators did not need to be mentioned. The interference and erosion of the magnetic field made the spiritual power in the cultivator's body obscure. Body cultivators could at least rely on their physique to persist for a longer time in the depths of the earth. If it was another cultivator, they would definitely not be able to succeed, and they might even lose their lives. As for ghost cultivators, although their physique was not as strong as body cultivators, they were good at hiding themselves and could sneak around. However, this method of doing things depended on luck, because the insect path was sometimes not wide enough. Once they encountered the insects, there was a risk of being exposed. The beast taming school controlled the insects to explore the path. However, the cultivators of the beast taming school were not very strong, so their ability to protect themselves in the insect path was very weak. Chapter 1096. Beast Taming School. The headmaster's shock. Gentle reminder: to prevent incomplete content and text from being out of order, please do not use the browser app reading mode. One thing to note was that the Beast Taming School's law did not have an obvious effect on the insects, and there was no way to make the insects obey. Lu Ye's method combined the Beast Taming School and ghost cultivators, who could imitate it. In the past, ghost cultivators and Beast Taming School cultivators cooperated, just like Lu Yi. However, once the insects were too far away from their masters, they could no longer control them, and the ghost cultivators lost their lives in vain. This disciple encountered a door at the end of the insect path. After entering, it would be the insect race's great secret realm. While Lu Yi was speaking, the headmaster quickly checked the few image recording stones. For a powerhouse like him, it was normal to divide his attention. Although the images in the image recording stones were created by Lu Yi after a few days, the headmaster's divine sense was activated, and he saw through it in a moment. What he saw and heard was beyond imagination. Originally, everyone in the 9 regions thought that there was a huge insect nest in the depths of the earth, and that the nest was the source of the insect disaster. But now it seemed that this was not the case. The situation was worse than expected. Please enter the latest update in your browser. Go to the Exquisite Book Pavilion to view Chapter 1096. Disaster. The Headmaster's Shock. Chapter 1097. At the end of the tunnel was not an insect nest, but the entrance to an entire great secret realm. There were many insect nests in the great secret realm. Insects stood in great numbers. It was a shocking sight. If news of this got out, it would definitely cause a huge impact on the cultivation world of the entire 9 provinces. However, the information revealed by these images was not entirely a bad thing. This was because the 9 prefectures had always been preset on what they should do if they could find the worm's nest. At least, there would not be too much space below, so they could not mobilize too many people. When the time came, they could only send the strongest divine sea realm cultivators. They would work together to destroy the insect nest. However, if it was an insect great secret realm, there would be no such concerns. From the images, the insect race's great secret realm was extremely vast. As long as they could set up a defense line as soon as they charged in, they could send in reinforcements endlessly. Using the 9 provinces to their advantage of numbers, they could use the human wave tactic. The sect master immediately thought of many things. He asked a key question in a hurry: does the insect race's great secret realm have origin magnetism? Field? No. Lu Yi shook his head. According to what I know, the insect race's great secret realm is a miniature world. It's deep underground. All right. The sect master's eyes shone. This news could not be any better. His mind raced, and he thought of another question. There are a total of 9 gates in the great secret realm. Can you check them out? Where do these gates lead to? Lu Yi said, I was just reporting. Disciple was just about to report this matter. Disciple has entered and exited each of these 9 doors at least once. I've taken a look at the locations of the 9 great gates. In other words, if you start from the Thunder Province, you'll definitely reach the gate that connects to the Thunder Province if you head deeper into a crack in the ground. You'll reach the gate that connects to the Mist Province. Such a coincidence? The sect master was stunned. Lu Yi said meaningfully, I also find it very coincidental. The sect master's eyes flickered. He understood. There were some things that did not need to be said too clearly. It was fine as long as everyone understood. Oh right, sect master. I've discovered that the insect blood seems to be able to block the corrosion of origin magnetism to a certain extent. The sect master nodded. We've noticed this a very long time ago. Over the past few years, so many divine sea realm cultivators from the 2 great factions had investigated the cracks in the ground. Although he didn't notice it, it wasn't easy to make use of it. The insectoid blood could block the magnetic field to a certain extent, but the effect was limited and could not be completely blocked. It couldn't play a decisive role. Now, no matter if it's our Hautian Alliance or the Myriad Demon Ridge, we're all trying to get help from this aspect. The insectoid's blood had created something that could completely block the magnetic field, but unfortunately, the results were minimal. Would the Myriad Demon's Ridge be hiding something? Lu Yi asked. The sect leader couldn't help but laugh. In this situation, what good is there for them to hide? It's not like they can deal with the infestation by themselves, because if such a thing was really developed, both factions would definitely send out people to defend against the enemy, so there was no need to worry. If they can really develop it, they will definitely share it with us. Hautian Alliance will do the same. Yes. Lu Yi thought about it and agreed. The insect plague was a problem of the entire 9 prefectures, not a problem of a certain faction. At the last moment, everyone had to do their best. No one should even think about watching the show. Not only would they not hide anything, but they would also inform each other immediately if there was any major discovery. Yi, I'm going to take away this great merit of yours. The sect leader held the few shadow stones with a serious expression. Do you understand? Lu Yi nodded. I understand. In the past few years, so many old guys had worked hard but couldn't find any valuable information, but Lu Ye sighed. He even took out the image of the insectoid race's secret realm. If this spread out, how could those old guys endure it? It would push Lu Yi to the heart of the storm. As the saying went, the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Lu Yi had caused a big commotion in the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm, and was seen as a thorn in the side of the Myriad Demon Ridge's top sections. Now that he had been quiet for a few years, it was naturally not good for him to be in the limelight again. Especially when this limelight was related to the future of the entire 9 prefectures. The sect leader didn't want to steal the credit. He was just using this method to protect Lu Yi. Just like when Lu Yi was able to refine the twin chi connecting array disk, Pang Zhen issued a gag order at the conference. He was a top divine sea realm cultivator who had been in charge of exploring the depths of the earth fissure for a long time. Now that he had revealed this, although it would be surprising, it wasn't unexpected. Of course, Lu Yi could understand the sect leader's intention. I need to gather the elders for a meeting. Yi, go back to the pass first. Don't run around for a while. Yes. A moment later, Lu Yi left Grand Sky City and headed in the direction of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. A day later, many figures gathered in the Peace Light Hall. It had only been half a year since the last conference. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have gathered again so soon. Even it wasn't time for the small conference yet. However, after everyone received the message, they still hurried to Grand Sky City to gather. Everyone knew that something big must have happened. Something big must have happened. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gathered everyone at this time. As usual, Pang Zhen was the host. He sat at the head of the table. On both sides of the oval table, the upper echelons of the entire Grand Sky Alliance of the military province sat down. Everyone sat. This time, it could be said that the upper echelons had gathered the most. Everyone looked at Pang Zhen. He was the one who gathered everyone. Of course, only he knew what had happened. Pang Zhen didn't waste any time. He just waved his hand. Streams of light shot toward everyone. They were shadow recording stones. This time, I gathered all of you for a meeting because Elder Tang made some special discoveries. Please take a look first. Everyone raised their hands and grabbed the shadow recording stones in front of them. They immersed themselves in it and activated their divine consciousness to investigate. In an instant, the atmosphere in the Peace Light Hall became chaotic. Just like how the sect leader was shocked when he saw the images in the shadow recording stones, everyone present was the same. Although they didn't know what the place in the images was, but anyone could guess that it was the source of the insect disaster. Suppressing the shock in their hearts, they continued to investigate. A moment later, people finished their investigations one after another. Their eyes were solemn. But no one asked anything, because everyone knew that Pang Zhen would give an explanation. After everyone finished their investigations, Pang Zhen said, "Since the outbreak of the insect disaster, many Divine Sea Realm cultivators from both sides have been working hard on the Deep Sea Realm. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much progress in the past few years. Elder Tang's influence this time is very great. It's precious enough to clear a lot of our doubts. The information we had before was that we could find the insect path by going deep into the earth. We speculated that the end of the insect path was the insect, where the insect nest was. But now, it seems that this speculation was wrong. The end of the insect path wasn't the insect nest, but the door that led to this place. The door to the insect race's great secret realm. There are countless fissures in the 9 prefectures now. But no matter which fissures you go deep into, you will eventually reach a door. There are 9 such doors in the entire 9 prefectures. I think everyone has seen clearly that the doors in the insect race's great secret realm are 9. They correspond to the 9 prefectures of the 9 prefectures. The bad news is that the situation at the source of the insect disaster is even worse than we thought. This is a great secret realm of the insect race. The scale of the insect race's great secret realm is not small. There are countless insects, and there are even giant insects that are stronger than giant insects. I'm sure everyone can feel that it is not something that a single cultivator can fight against. To be honest, I have cultivated for so many years. I have seen such insects before. The good news is that these giant insects are too big, so it is difficult for them to crawl out of the insect path and cause trouble in the 9 prefectures. This is also the reason why we have not noticed their existence. There is another piece of good news. The insect race's great secret realm does not have a magnetic field. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was moved. An elder said, "Doesn't this mean that as long as we can enter the insect race's great secret realm, we won't be suppressed? The key is how to enter the insect race's great secret realm. Since Elder Tang has already been there, there must be a way." The group of people looked at the sect leader eagerly. The sect leader shook his head and said, "Only Elder Tang can enter the insect race's great secret realm. I can use it myself, but others can't. There is no way to popularize it." Everyone couldn't help but look disappointed. No one felt that the sect leader was lying about this matter. After all, solving the insect disaster was the 9 prefectures' wish. Moreover, the sect leader's character was here. If it could be popularized, he would definitely not hide it. Can we ask Elder Tang to set up a teleportation array in front of the door? If we can do that, we can teleport directly. Let's pass, someone suggested. Pangjin said, Elder Tang and I have thought of this method before. However, Elder Tang is not proficient in array formations and can't set up a teleportation array. Secondly, even if we can use a ready-made array base and array disk, it will be difficult for Elder Tang to set up an array formation alone. At the same time, he will need to maintain the operation of the array formation. Moreover, the distance is too far and there is the suppression of the magnetic field. Even if we set up an array formation, there is a high probability that it won't work. He gently knocked on the table. Therefore, the most important problem to solve now is how to block the magnetic field. Only by solving this problem can we talk about the future. This was very uncomfortable. In the past, they didn't know the situation of the insect race's great secret realm. Now that they knew, they understood. They understood the enemy's situation, but there was no way to rush over to carry out an effective attack. Pang Zhen looked at Chao Yi. Department Head Chao, the Quartermaster Department needs to speed up. The insect disaster has been going on for nearly 3 years. We cultivators are fine, but most mortals can't farm. It's not a long-term solution to rely on surplus food to survive. If this situation doesn't change, in a few years, I'm afraid that 9 out of 10 rooms in the 9 prefectures will be empty. Mortals were the foundation of the cultivation world. If the number of mortals was too small, the cultivation world would also be shaken. This was also the case in the 9 prefectures. Within the 9 prefectures, cultivators were not allowed to affect mortals. A large number of medical cultivators and alchemists had gathered at the Quartermaster Department. They were studying the insect blood's blocking effect on the magnetic field. Unfortunately, there was not much progress to be made. Chapter 1098. Chao Yi said with a bitter face, I'll do my best. In fact, not only did the Haotian Alliance of the military province gather many medical cultivators and alchemists to study the isolation effect of the insect blood on the magnetic field, but the other provinces also did the same. Moreover, they did not hide the results of their research. Once they discovered something, they would share it. However, there was no substantial progress so far. This made him sigh helplessly. It was true that he was the head of the Quartermaster Division, and it wasn't a problem for him to ensure the supply of supplies. However, this wasn't what he did for a living. Forcing a duck onto a perch at the last moment was somewhat difficult for him. Before, he didn't even know the situation in the deepest part of the insect path. Now that he had obtained a lot of information about the insect race's secret realm, he only needed to solve the problem of the magnetic field erosion. Then, the 9 continents would be able to mobilize their army. He could only hope that the people under the demon path would be more successful. After Pang Zhen finished his instructions, he knocked on the table lightly. According to the usual practice, we have such a big discovery. Shouldn't we share the information with the Demon Ridge? What do you think? This time, no one objected. Although such information was precious and rare, this was not the time to hide it. Everyone was aware of this and unanimously agreed to pass the information to the Myriad Devil Ridge. They believed that the Myriad Devil Ridge would not think that they were deceiving them. The images in the image recording stone couldn't be fake. They believed that the Demon Ridge would understand the seriousness of the situation and the most urgent problem to solve. Soon, the plan was set. Someone would copy the images in the image recording stone and bring it to the Demon Ridge. A great meeting started in a hurry and ended very quickly. Most of the discussions between cultivators were like this. They couldn't keep arguing about certain things, especially when they were short on manpower. Efficiency was the most important thing. When the hierarch walked out of the Light Harmony Hall, Qian Wudong was waiting for him. The hierarch looked over. Department Leader Qian, what's the matter? Qian Wudong laughed. Nothing, I just have some questions to ask Elder Tang. About the insect race's secret realm. Some things in the images weren't clear. Go ahead. Qian Wudong asked a few questions, and the hierarch answered them one by one. He sighed. Department Leader Qian, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush in front of me. He could tell that Gan Wudong's question was fake. He obviously had other intentions. Qian Wudong chuckled and looked around to make sure no one was around. Then he sent a message to Qian Wudong. Did Lu Ye come to Haotian City yesterday? I've been here before. The headmaster's expression remained the same, but he sighed inwardly. As expected of the head of the law department, his intuition was very sharp. Of course, this also had to do with the fact that he was Lu Ye's immediate superior. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have deliberately followed Lu Ye's movements. This brat has no respect for his superiors. Gan Wudong was a bit annoyed. No matter what, I'm still his superior in name. Since he's in Haotian City, why didn't he come to greet me? However, Elder Tang, you have been exploring the Earth Fissure for several years without finding anything. Lu Ye, on the other hand, only came to Vast Sky City, and you made such a big discovery. It's hard to guarantee that people won't make the connection. If we inquire a little more, we should be able to find out that he went deep into the Earth Fissure a month ago and only returned yesterday. The headmaster said indifferently, so what if people make the connection? He can do things that ordinary people can't. He has reached the Spirit Sea realm at such a young age. What's more amazing is that even at this level, he can still easily kill enemies above his level. Elder Tang, the Blue Blood sect has taken in a good disciple. However, there are some things that we have to take precautions against. For example, some people who are old and lonely, disheartened and full of hatred may take risks out of desperation. The headmaster's eyes flashed. Then what should we do, Head Qian? Qian Wudong chuckled. How would I know? Elder Tang, you're asking me a difficult question. The law department's style for so many years is to deal with things after the fact. We pay attention to solid evidence so that people can't say anything. Therefore, I can't help you with this kind of thing. Qian Wudong sighed. Elder Tang, I'm not exaggerating. It's just that when people get old, they have no one to rely on and no hope. It's easy for them to go to extremes and do anything. This is what people call unreasonable. The headmaster thought of his state of mind back then and agreed. You're right. Back then, he was quite disheartened. Of course, it wasn't as serious as Qian Wudong described. After all, there was a girl who accompanied him and fulfilled her filial piety. However, if the girl was gone, would he still be the same? He couldn't be sure and didn't dare to think about it. I didn't know that you're so young, but you have a good grasp of the state of mind of old people like us. Qian Wudong laughed. In front of Elder Tang, I'm not that old. However, if I were still immortal, I would be playing with my grandchildren by now. After chatting for a while, Qian Wudong left. The headmaster stood there and thought for a while. Then, he raised his hand and sent a message. At the Tianji Palace, the transmission array lit up. Lu Yi had returned. Yesterday, he left Haotian City and went back to the fissure. There was no need to stay there for long. Now that his avatar was guarding the fissure, he could take care of the cultivators on both sides. Also, the transmission array was connected. If there was any danger, his original body and Lin Yu could help at any time. The mountain pass wasn't as crowded as before. The main reason was that there were very few people guarding it. There were only about 50 of them. Even these 50 people took turns to guard it. Now, everyone knew that guarding the mountain pass was a leisurely job. They could only earn merit points at the fissure. Naturally, they all wanted to stay there. However, the mountain pass still needed people to guard it. Therefore, they had to take turns. After walking out of the Tianji Palace, Yu Huang came up to him. It was his turn to guard the mountain pass for the next half-month. Lord. Yu Huang bowed. Yes. Lu Yi responded. Then, he asked as usual, is everything okay at the mountain pass? It's fine. Yu Huang replied. Ever since Lu Yi focused on guarding the fissure, It was rare to see any insectoids within 500 miles of the mountain pass, let alone the mountain pass. Now, this defensive pattern had been copied by the other mountain passes at the front lines of the military province. It formed a small-scale cooperation between the two factions. It was also spreading to the other 8 continents. It wouldn't be long before all the mountain passes at the front lines would do the same. However, this couldn't be done inside the continent. Many of the fishers were unguarded. After giving Yu Huang a few words of encouragement, Lu Yi headed back to his sleeping quarters. Exploring the fissure took him more than a month. It had delayed his cultivation progress. However, compared to the gains, this sacrifice was worth it. At the very least, he understood the situation inside the insectoid Great Mystic Realm. Standing at the door, Lu Yi didn't rush to open it. Instead, he looked at something on the door. There was a storage pouch placed on the door knocker. That was strange. He looked around and didn't see anyone. He used his divine telekinesis and found that it was just an ordinary storage pouch. There was nothing special about it. Lu Yi took it and pushed the door open. Yi and Hu Po were cultivating diligently. Lu Yi had left many golden spirit sticks for her, enough for her to use for a long time. Although there was a rule that everything in the War Merit Pavilion could only be used by oneself, Yi was Hu Po's despondent spirit, and Hu Po was Lu Ye's natal Yao beast. Therefore, Yi could also use the things that Lu Yi brought out from the War Merit Pavilion. Hearing the noise, Yi opened her eyes and happily said, "Lu Yi, you're back?" Lu Yi nodded and asked, "Did you notice anyone loitering outside the door recently?" Yi shook her head. "No. Why? Nothing. If someone had left a storage pouch for him, it wouldn't have been discovered." In order to conserve the energy of the defensive formation at the mountain pass, the formation wasn't activated all the time. In addition, there was a shortage of manpower. Anyone with some tricks could sneak in. However, judging from the current situation, the intruder didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Of course, the storage pouch on the door knocker could be a gift from a soldier at the mountain pass. Thinking this, Lu Yi used his spirit power to investigate and found a restriction lock on the storage pouch. This confirmed that it wasn't the goodwill of a soldier at the mountain pass. Otherwise, they wouldn't have left behind a restriction lock. In other words, while Lu Yi wasn't here, someone had sneaked into the mountain pass and left this storage pouch behind. What could it be? Breaking the restriction lock was easy for Lu Yi. In just a moment, the restriction lock was removed. Using his divine sense to investigate, he found that there wasn't anything strange inside, only a shadow recording stone. He had just given the sect leader a few shadow recording stones yesterday, and someone had actually given him one today. It was quite a coincidence. Taking out the shadow recording stone, he used his divine sense to investigate. Soon, the image in the shadow recording stone was clearly imprinted into his mind. Lu Yi could tell at a glance that the scene inside was from the insect race's great secret realm. Had he been discovered by someone when he sneaked into the insect race's great secret realm? But soon, Lu Yi realized that something was wrong. Although this was the scene of the insect race's great secret realm, it was different from the one he had personally recorded. Most importantly, the angle of view was different. At that time, he had been hiding on the back of the sacred beetle, so his field of view was very high. However, the scene in this shadow recording stone was clearly on the ground. Other than him, there was someone else who had sneaked into the insect race's great secret realm. Lu Ye's heart shook. Sure enough, he couldn't underestimate the talents of the world. He had originally thought that he was the only one who had sneaked into the insect race's great secret realm, but now it seemed that it was very likely that someone else had done it before him. But if that was the case, why didn't the sect leader know? Logically speaking, such a major discovery should have been made known to the upper echelons of both camps at the first moment. What was the meaning of this person deliberately giving this shadow recording stone to him? The image in the shadow recording stone was very short, only a mere dozen breaths of time. Lu Yi flipped it over and over again, but he didn't find any useful information. The latest domain name of this site. 1. Chapter 1099. If he had not gone deep into the insect tribe's great secret realm, he might not have guessed what this place was just by looking at the image recording stone. He would have simply thought that it was a gathering place for the insect tribe. Since the image recording stone's field of vision was not high enough, it naturally could not see the insect tribe's great secret realm as a whole. Unlike his image recording stone, the sect leader realized that it was the source of the insect disaster as soon as he got his hands on it. Lu Yi was confused because there was nothing else that could be traced except for a storage bag and an image recording stone that only lasted for over 10 breaths. He did not know who the image recording stone's owner was, nor did he know why the person gave it to him. Logically speaking, if such a discovery was reported, it would be a great merit. To prevent him from being in the limelight, the sect leader even wanted him to take the credit. Lu Yi could understand the sect leader's intention, but he did not understand why the image recording stone's owner would give him the credit. Moreover, he had just returned from the insect tribe's great secret realm, but he found the image recording stone. Was the timing a coincidence? If he did not go deep into the fissure to investigate, would the image recording stone still be sent to him? Did the person know that he had been to the insect tribe's great secret realm? There were many things that he did not know the answer to. Nevertheless, Lu Yi vaguely felt that it should be a coincidence because he had just reported the insect tribe's great secret realm to the sect leader yesterday. No matter how fast the sect leader was, the news should only be spread to the upper echelons of the military province's Hautian alliance. Therefore, the image recording stone's owner must not know that he had been to the insect tribe's great secret realm. The scene in the image recording stone was not attractive to him at all. Thinking about that, Lu Yi vaguely understood something. No matter what the person wanted to do, it was clear that the person wanted to use this to attract him to achieve some hidden purpose. Under normal circumstances, this thing would be very attractive to him indeed. However, after he had been to the insect tribe's great secret realm, the sound was no longer useful to him. Nevertheless, no matter what the person in the dark was planning, this was only the beginning. Lu Yi put the image recording stone away and sat with his legs crossed. He focused and entered a cultivation state. His guess was right. The image recording stone that only lasted for over 10 breaths was indeed only the beginning. Over the next few months, a storage bag would be secretly sent to him almost every half a month. Every time, it was a shadow recording stone that only lasted for a dozen breaths of time. In 4 months, there were a total of 8 image recording stones. Once the images in the 8 image recording stones were pieced together, they would be able to see more of the insectoid race's great secret realm. The other party's timing was very clever. Every time, it was when Lu Yi went to support the rift, not revealing his whereabouts at all. Lu Yi knew that he was being watched. Perhaps someone was secretly watching him, or perhaps there was someone else's informant at the mouth of the passage. Otherwise, there was no way the timing could be so perfect. He didn't care. After a few months, he already had a guess as to who sent this image recording stone. The other party might have thought that this would pique his interest, but in the end, it was useless. And from this, it could be inferred that the level of contact of the person behind this was not high enough. If they were high enough, they would definitely know that the Blue Blood sect master had already entered the insect race's great secret realm and explored it, so they wouldn't waste their time here. At the moment, this information was only spread among the highest-level cultivators in the 9 continents. It hadn't spread yet because the time wasn't right. He did what he should do, cultivating hard every day and making explosive fire spirit stones and formation discs. In the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Li Taibai received an urgent call from Lin Yu and hurried back. Ever since the two sects started working together, there would always be a divine ocean realm cultivator guarding the rift. However, this wasn't necessary. If there was any danger, the soldiers could send a message back. With the teleportation formation, whether it was Lin Yu, Lu Yi, or Li Taibai's clone, they could rush over to save the situation immediately. Therefore, even if there wasn't a divine ocean realm cultivator on the other side, it didn't matter much. In the main hall, Lin Yu handed a jade slip to Li Taibai. "Take a look at this." Li Taibai's clone took it and used his divine sense to check it. He raised his eyebrows. "Yu Huajin, who is she?" Although he didn't know who this person was, the information revealed in the jade slip was extraordinary. He was sure that this person was a very powerful master from Grand Heaven Alliance. At the very least, she was somewhat famous. She's a senior elder from Heavenly Yuan sect. At the same time, she's also the division chief of Grand Heaven Alliance's Heaven's Gate Pass. She's a 9th Order Divine Ocean Realm cultivator. Lin Yu explained. "You don't know Yu Huajin, but do you remember Lu Yuemei and Tan Shu?" Li Taibai's clone nodded. Of course. These two unlucky people died in his hand. How could he forget them? Yu Huajin is Tan Shu's grandmother and Lu Yuemei's mother-in-law. Li Taibai's clone understood. If that's the case, why didn't she stay in Grand Heaven Alliance? Why did she defect to Myriad Demon's Ridge? There was only one piece of information revealed in the jade slip. Yu Huajin was preparing to defect to Myriad Demon's Ridge. Lu Yi didn't understand the deeper meaning at first. Since ancient times, the two camps had been fighting against each other. There were also precedents of voluntary or passive defection. However, it shouldn't have happened in this world where insects were rampant. As soon as Lin Yu mentioned Lu Yuemei and Tan Shu, Lu Yi vaguely understood. Since she wants to defect, there should be a proof of her loyalty and sincerity. What is her proof of loyalty and sincerity? Li Taibai's clone asked. Lin Yu slowly spat out 3 words, Luya. She's going to kill Luya? Lin Yu nodded. That's right. She knows that the top sects on our side see Luya as a thorn in their side. However, due to the current situation, it's inconvenient for them to take action personally to avoid unnecessary trouble. Therefore, she wants to use Luya's head as a proof of her loyalty, hoping to join Myriad Demon's Ridge and receive protection. After all, since ancient times, the two camps have never been soft on traitors. Li Taibai's clone understood and said, since that's the case, she can just do it directly. When the time comes, wouldn't it be more sincere if she brought Luya's head to us? She's just a 9th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. There's no reason for us to not accept her, right? That's why she needs a suitable battlefield. That's why the Thousand Demons City sent us the news. We've been very close to Luya during this period of time, and he's personally come to the Dark Moon Forest Pass before, so he won't be too wary of us. Even if it was Yu Huajin, it was impossible for her to make a move at Shocking Waves Lake Pass, let alone at the crack in the ground. If she wanted to kill Lu Yi, she would have to lure the tiger away from the mountain and lure Lu Yi to Dark Moon Forest Pass. At that time, with the geographical advantage and the cooperation of Lin Yu and Li Taibai, Lu Yi would be unable to escape. Li Taibai's clone looked normal on the surface, but he was sneering in his heart, secretly remembering Yu Huajin's name. When he first placed his clone in Dark Moon Forest Pass, it was just a casual move, but he didn't expect it to play such a big role. If Yu Huajin wanted to deal with him, she didn't hesitate to borrow the strength of Myriad Demon's Ridge. If it weren't for his clone here, Lu Yi would definitely be kept in the dark. If he rashly came to Dark Moon Forest Pass, he would be doomed. But now that he knew, the situation was naturally different. These are all Yu Huajin's requests. She also came up with the operation plan. Although it is simple, it is indeed very effective. I believe that Luya won't be too wary of us now. Li Taibai's clone thought to himself, if you didn't say anything, I really wouldn't be on guard. But since you said it, all my schemes will be useless. At worst, I won't go to Dark Moon Forest Pass. What are the instructions from Myriad Demon's City? Compared to Yu Huajin's scheme, he was more concerned about Myriad Demon's Ridge's attitude. Lin Yu smiled slightly. Warn Luia. The clone was a little stunned. He never thought that Myriademon's Ridge would make such a decision. Logically speaking, if Myriademon's Ridge agreed to Yu Huajin's request and cooperated with her operation, Lu Yi wouldn't be surprised at all. After all, many of the big sects there did see him as a thorn in their side. They couldn't wait to get rid of him. If he cooperated with Yu Huajin, not only would he be able to take revenge, but he would also be able to obtain the loyalty of a ninth-order divine Sea Realm cultivator. Killing two birds with one stone, why not? Why is that? The clone was puzzled. Lin Yu said, let's not talk about Luia first. Let's talk about Yu Huajin. That old woman isn't a good person. She really wants to kill Luia, but she is obviously hiding something. As far as we know, the twin Qi-connected spirit array disk is a mysterious artifact. It was created by Luia. Although Pang Zhen had issued a gag order at the Great Council back then, some news would eventually leak out after such a long time. Perhaps the news wasn't conclusive enough, but as long as one paid more attention, they would be able to deduce the truth. Without mentioning anything else, the fact that the Quartermaster Division would send someone to Shocking Waves Lake Pass every month was very suspicious. Moreover, Luia had given Lin Yu 100 array discs back then. The twin Qi-connected spirit array disk is extremely mysterious. We have also organized artifact refiners to copy it, but unfortunately, the results were minimal. On the other hand, Grand Heaven Alliance has been equipped with it on a large scale. Obviously, they can mass-produce it. This is most likely Luia's ability. How could Yu Huajin not know the information that we all know? In the current situation, this array disk is too useful for cultivators. If Luia dies, who will refine it? We are salivating over this divine artifact. So, she must have concealed this matter because once this matter is exposed, we will never cooperate with her. At this time, the two camps are working together to overcome this difficult time. The death of Luia will have a huge impact on the situation. It is very likely that the relationship between the two camps will be broken again. No one can afford to bear this responsibility. The clone nodded slightly. He couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. He never thought that one day, his life and death would affect the relationship between the two camps. He didn't know whether he should feel honored or afraid. Just by concealing this matter, Yu Huajin's intentions are worthy of death. Moreover, she wants to kill Luia for a personal grudge because she suspects that Luia died in Luia's hands. However, there is no real evidence for this matter. On the contrary, you killed Tan Shu in front of everyone. An old thing like her wants to kill Luia based on groundless accusations. Don't tell me she doesn't have any thoughts about you? Not only does she want to kill Luia, but she also wants to kill you. After all, Luia is only her daughter-in-law, but Tan Shu is her grandson. It is needless to say which side has a bigger grudge. The latest domain name of this website, 1. Chapter 1100. Therefore, Yu Huajin definitely wants to kill you. Joining the Wan Mo Ridge might just be a pretense. If she can get rid of Luia, she will definitely make a move on you. Lin Yu's analysis was very reasonable. Compared to Luia, Yu Huajin wanted to kill Li Taibai more. Just as Lin Yu said, the old thing only suspected Luia, but Li Taibai killed Tan Shu in front of everyone. The cultivators from both sides witnessed it with their own eyes. She betrayed the Haotian alliance and offended our Wan Mo Ridge. How can there be a place for her in the land of the 9 states? The clone was confused. Lin Yu sighed. I'm afraid that an old thing like her would rather die for revenge. Why would she care about the future? As long as she can kill you or Luia, it would be a gain for her. Hatred is something that can change a person beyond recognition. It can also make a person's actions become unreasonable. She probably didn't want to continue living. People who were full of hatred were not scary. What was scary was people who were not only full of hatred but also had the will to die. No one knew what crazy things this kind of person would do. If it was in the past, the higher-ups might have accepted her suggestion. To us, Yu Huajin's action is just a dogfight. It has nothing to do with us. However, the situation now is different. Lu Ye must live. Once he dies, the relationship between the two camps will definitely be broken again. It won't be beneficial to the current situation. Moreover, only he can refine the twin spirit connection disc. If we can use this opportunity to save Lu Ye's life, the higher-ups might have a chance to get a batch of disc from the Hautian Alliance. Of course, the most important thing is that we have you on our side. Me? The clone was stunned. Lin Yu smiled and said, "A few years ago, Lu Ye was only at the Spirit Stream tier and Cloud River tier, but the various top sects of the Myriad Demon Ridge viewed him as a scourge. They weren't making a big fuss over nothing, but they had learned a lesson from the mistakes of others. They had no choice but to guard against him. In particular, the Jade Blood sect that Lu Ye came from was the sect of Feng Wujiang. The various top sects were terrified of Feng Wujiang, and they feared that another such character would appear in the Jade Blood sect. That was why they issued a large bounty for his life. Hautian Alliance has Lu Ye, but Wanemo Ridge has you, Li Taibai. Although you are not as famous as him, both of you are on par with each other in terms of potential. Hence, there will be someone who can keep him in check, and the tragedy that happened decades ago will not happen again." The doppelganger lowered his eyes and remained silent. He was very curious about how the Myriad Demon's Ridge would react if the truth of his doppelganger was exposed one day, anger attacking the heart, flustered and exasperated. Hence, the higher-ups decided to warn Lu Ye and ask him to be careful. "Junior brother Taibai, you are about the same age as him, and you have similar temperament. This matter requires you to make a trip." The doppelganger nodded. "It is my duty. However, senior sister, according to my understanding of him, since Yu Huajin has the intention to kill him, Nachi will definitely not let it go. It is very likely that he will beat her at her own game. If that is the case, how should we deal with it?" Lin Yu said, "The Myriad Demon Ridge has already expected this. If that is the case, then you can negotiate with him. Use the twin spirit-connected branches formation disc as a bargaining chip. We can help him kill Yu Huajin. Junior brother, I know that both of you are friends, but friendship is friendship. You must be clear about your private matters. If this matter is done well, it will be a great merit. It will also be beneficial for junior brother to establish himself in the Myriad Demon Ridge in the future." "I understand." The doppelganger moved quickly and arrived at the fissure through the teleportation array. Then, he set off from the fissure and flew towards the Shocking Waves Lake. Although the original body had already seen everything clearly, he still had to go through the motions. Yu Huajin must be killed. Although they did not know each other, she was willing to betray the Hautian Alliance and join the Myriad Demon Ridge to kill him. From his standpoint, there was no need for him to be merciful to her. He only hoped that after this incident, there would not be any more similar incidents. After killing Tan Shu, Lu Yueme was lured out. After killing Lu Yueme, Yu Huajin came out. It could not be endless. As for Lin Yu's request, it was not a big deal. He could provide a batch of twin spirit-connected branches formation disc. As long as the quantity was not too large, it would not be a problem. With a thought, he suddenly got up and rushed out of the door. He unsheathed his Pan-Shan saber and slashed out a crescent-shaped saber light. The void in front of him was distorted. A vague figure flashed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Accompanied by a soft exclamation, the figure disappeared. Lu Yi spread out his divine perception but could not find the other party's aura. The other party ran very fast and was very vigilant. However, that brief glimpse just now allowed him to roughly recognize who it was. The cultivators on duty at the mountain pass heard the commotion and hurried over. Lu Yi waved his hand at them, indicating that everything was fine. Only then did the soldiers retreat. Yi and Hu Po also rushed out, bewildered. Yi asked, "Lu Yi, what's wrong?" "An old friend came to visit me," Lu Yi replied and sheathed his saber. When Yi saw this, she knew that this old friend was most likely not a good friend. Hoopa lowered his head and picked up a storage pouch from the ground with his mouth. He scuttled to Lu Ye's shoulder. This storage pouch was obviously left behind when the other party came over. He opened the storage pouch and took out a shadow recording stone and a jade slip. After checking, the shadow recording stone showed the scene of the insect race's great secret realm. It was only a dozen breaths. There was a sentence in the jade slip. "Someone wants to harm you. Don't run around for a while." He was inwardly surprised. These people were really well informed. He had just learned about Yu Huajin's matter from his clone, and the other party actually ran over to give him a warning. Although the message was vague, it was indeed a warning. From the looks of it, the other party clearly had people in Myriad Demon's Ridge, or else they would not know about Yu Huajin's matter. However, the other party's level of contact was not high enough. Otherwise, they should have known about Myriad Demon City's true decision and would not have specially run over to warn him. He raised his hand and tapped on his battlefield imprint, sending a message out. "Since you're already here, why are you running so fast?" The other party only replied after a while. "What are you talking about?" She looked like she could not do anything even if she was exposed and refused to admit it. Lu Yi looked down on her secretive style. Since the other party refused to admit it, he could not be bothered to say anything more. He raised a hand and patted Yi's small head. "Go cultivate. It's fine now." Yi nodded and led Hupu into the room. Lu Yi leaped and landed on the city wall of the mountain pass. A moment later, his clone, Li Taibai, rushed over and landed beside Lu Yi. Among the soldiers who stayed behind, their mountain pass master and Li Taibai, the young mountain pass master of the Dark Moon Forest Pass, stood side by side. They chatted and laughed for a while before Li Taibai left on his sword and soon disappeared. Lu Ye's clone returned to the Dark Moon Forest Pass and informed Lin Yu of the results of this trip. Lu Ye promised to give us 2,000 array discs as a reward after the mission is completed. 2,000. Lin Yu frowned slightly. This number is a little low. Although there was no clear number of array discs requested by Myriad Demon City, it was obvious that the more, the better. 2,000 array discs could at most equip less than 20,000 cultivators. Compared to the huge size of Myriad Demon's Ridge, it was really a drop in the bucket. However, Myriad Demon City obviously also knew that such strategic resources, even if Lu Yi refined them, did not have much autonomy in the distribution, especially when it was funded to Myriad Demon's Ridge. If this had happened before, it would have been proper funding of the enemy, and they would definitely be held accountable. However, the current situation was different, and both sides had some room to maneuver. Still, the number could not be too large. The clone shook his head and said, "This is the maximum number that Lu Ye can provide. He can't do anything more." Lin Yu sighed. "So be it. It's better than nothing." In terms of talent, she believed that Li Taibai was not inferior to Lu Ye in the slightest, and his future achievements would definitely not be lower than Lu Ye's. However, in terms of unorthodox methods, Lu Ye was clearly superior. This could not be helped. After all, Lu Ye had the foundation of a spirit tattoo master, while Li Taibai was a sword cultivator. What else could he know besides flying swords? In today's world, it was already a blessing for Myriad Demon's Ridge to have Li Taibai. It was not good to ask for too much. Moreover, with this cooperation, there would be other opportunities in the future. "Have you discussed what to do?" Lin Yu asked. The clone said, "He means that there is no need to have so many schemes and tricks. Just be simple and straightforward. When the time comes, I will cooperate with him and senior sister will hold the fort." Lin Yu understood. "That's not a problem. But can the two of you kill Yu Huajin together? After all, she is a 9th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator." The two heroes of the War Province were indeed skilled in cooperation, as if they were one, but their cultivation was still a shortcoming. No one could say for sure what their chances of winning against a ninth-order divine sea realm cultivator were. However, with Lin Yu holding the fort, there should be no problem if it was 3 against 1. The clone smiled proudly. Whether we can kill her or not, we will know after we fight. Time passed by. Half a month later, an uninvited guest suddenly came to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. He was wrapped in a black robe and his aura was hidden. Lin Yu was responsible for receiving him. She led him into a secret room and talked to him in detail. After settling him down, she left. She hurriedly found the clone and said bluntly, "Yu Huajin is here." The clone nodded. "I will send a message to Brother Ye and ask him to come over." Lin Yu said, "Yu Huajin's condition is not right. I can see that her vitality is slipping and her cultivation is very likely to have fallen. She also seems to have a faint will to die. I don't think she wants to leave alive. You have to be careful." It had to be said that Lin Yu's eyesight was quite sharp. Although Yu Huajin tried her best to restrain her aura and not reveal too much, Lin Yu was still a 7th-order divine sea realm cultivator. She could see through her at a glance. Half a year ago, when she was rushing to Shocking Waves Lake Pass, she was ambushed by Thought Moon Immortal and was severely injured on the spot. Her body, which was already in poor condition, became even more exhausted. Although her injuries were healed now, her cultivation had indeed slipped. The current her could no longer be considered a true 9th-order divine sea realm cultivator. The latest domain name of this site, 1. Chapter 1101. This was also the reason why Yu Huajin was so impatient. She couldn't wait any longer. According to the news she had heard, both Lu Ye and Li Taibai were progressing rapidly in their cultivation. On the other hand, she was getting old and her strength was declining day by day. If this continued, the gap between their cultivation would only become smaller and smaller. How could she take revenge then? She had already reached an agreement with the Myriad Devil Ridge. The Dark Moon Forest Pass would help her kill Lu Ye. When the time came, she would give the Myriad Devil Ridge information about the person who had created the twin chi-linked branch array disk. This was what the Myriad Devil Ridge wanted to know the most. Of course, Myriad Demon Ridge couldn't know that the refiner was Lu Ye. Otherwise, her plan wouldn't be able to be carried out. She wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. As for what would happen after that, she wouldn't be able to live for long. What was the point of thinking so much? Before she died, she would kill everyone who deserved to be killed. Then, she could go to the underworld with a smile. A few days later, somewhere in Dark Moon Forest Pass, Yu Huajin was waiting quietly in a black robe. This was the location of the transmission array. According to the plan, Lu Ye would receive Li Taibai's invitation and then be teleported here through the transmission array. After the teleportation, there would be a brief moment of absent-mindedness. That would be the best time for her to make a move. Even if her cultivation had declined, she was still a 9th-order divine sea realm cultivator. She was confident that she could kill him in one strike. The plan was simple but effective. Lin Yu and Li Taibai stood not far away. Yu Huajin, who was shrouded in a black robe, bent over and tried to hide the murderous intent in her heart. Lu Ye had to die. Li Taibai also had to die. Relatively speaking, her murderous intent towards Li Taibai was greater. However, she couldn't show it right now. Otherwise, all her efforts would be in vain. Since coming to Dark Moon Forest Pass, she had tried her best to show her desire to survive in order to gain Lin Yu's trust. But in fact, she knew that after she made a move this time, she wouldn't be able to survive no matter what. She had betrayed Grand Heaven Alliance and offended Myriad Demon Ridge. There was no place for her in the 9 provinces. First update at in this farce of mutual deception, Myriad Demon Ridge had its own plan. Yu Huajin and Zhang Huajin had their own plans. Lu Ye had another plan. For this reason, he had to find a helper, and this helper was ready-made. He believed that the other party would not refuse his request. Lu Yi was quietly waiting 150 kilometers away from Shocking Waves Lake. Under the moonlight, a figure slowly approached and stood 300 meters away from him. That figure was graceful and charming, and her face was also extremely beautiful. However, there was some vigilance in her eyes. "Why are you looking for me?" "Yu Daiwei." Lu Yi looked at her indifferently. "I need you to do me a favor." Yu Daiwei couldn't help but sneer. "We what? Relationship? Why should I help you? For the past few months, you've been sending me shadow recording stones. Wasn't it to arouse my curiosity so that I would take the initiative to look for you? Now that I'm doing as you wish, why do you have to be so difficult?" It was easy to deduce this point. Under the current situation, the various discoveries that he made after sneaking into the insect tribe's secret realm were undoubtedly a great achievement. However, the discoverer did not report it to the Grand Sky Alliance or the Myriad Demons Ridge. Instead, he sent the photostone that recorded the scene to him. There was no doubt that he wanted to arouse his curiosity. It was obvious that he wanted to give this achievement to him. This was because Grand Mountain wanted him to help establish a third faction. Such a merit would give Lu Yi a good reputation and stand on Grand Mountain's side. From the looks of it, the greater the reputation Lu Yi had, the more benefits he would receive after establishing a third faction. Therefore, he wanted to help Lu Yi build momentum first. Once Lu Ye's reputation and momentum had accumulated to a certain extent, he would be able to rise up in revolt. Bai Yu Daiwei snorted lightly and said, "Since you know I was the one who sent them here, it must have been hard for you to endure for so long. What, aren't you curious about the scenes recorded in those image recording stones? It's just the source of the insect disaster." Yu Daiwei frowned. "You're talking as if you've been there before." Lu Yi was silent. He had been there before, but there was no need to let Yu Daiwei know about this. Yu Daiwei said impatiently, "Since you have no intention of contacting us, why did you call me over? As for what you want me to help you with, don't even mention it, I will never help you. And didn't I tell you not to run around for a while? If you help me with this, I'll go with you to see Grand Mountain." Yu Daiwei's voice stopped abruptly. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1101. Helper. She looked at Lu Yi suspiciously. "Are you serious? You have to swear a heavenly oath first. Otherwise, I won't swear it. Promise." Lu Yi raised his hand. "Jade blood sex." Lu Yi respectfully invites the heavenly oath. Seeing this, Yu Daiwei immediately smiled. "At least you have a conscience. Say it. What do you want me to help with? Let's make it clear first. Don't mention it, lest we hurt each other's feelings. It's very simple. I need you to use the teleportation array once." Yu Daiwei immediately became alert. "Where is the starting point? Where does it lead to?" "From here, it leads to the Dark Moon Forest Pass." Yu Daiwei was alert. "What do you want to do?" "You don't need to know what I want to do. You just need to help me with this. But don't worry, I won't do anything disadvantageous to you. I'll also talk to the Dark Moon Forest Pass." Yu Daiwei tilted her head and looked at him. "Do you know that Yu Huajin has already entered the Dark Moon Forest Pass? She's waiting for you there. No, you want me to attract her attention. You want to sneak an attack on her?" Vaguely investigating the truth? Yu Daiwei was shocked. Lu Yi did not explain further. "You can treat this as a deal. Of course, it's up to you whether you agree or not. I don't care whether you help me or not." Even without Yu Daiwei, his plan could still be carried out. It was just a little troublesome. If Yu Daiwei could attract Yu Huajin's attention through the teleportation array, his plan would be more confident. "You're really daring." Yu Daiwei's face was full of surprise. Even she didn't want to easily provoke an old fellow like Yu Huajin, but Lu Yi didn't take it to heart. He understood. Dark Forest Pass is with you? If that wasn't the case, Lu Yi wouldn't have acted in such a manner. That old witch Yu Huajin had undoubtedly been sold out by the Myriad Devil Ridge. This was truly unexpected. But on second thought, it was normal for the myriad Devil Ridge to make such a choice, especially under the current situation. After pondering for a while, Yu Daiwei nodded and said, "All right, I'll help you. But don't forget your promise." Lu Yi immediately started to set up the teleportation array. After a while, he finished setting it up and said, "Wait for my news." Then he flew towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. At the teleportation array in the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Yu Huajin was a little impatient and asked, "Did something happen?" It was already the agreed time, but there was still no movement from the teleportation array. This made her feel a little uneasy. Lin Yu looked at the doppelganger and the doppelganger said, "I'll send a message to ask." It pretended to fiddle with the array and said again, "It will be here at any time. Elder Yu, please wait patiently." Yu Huajin was silent. She secretly activated her spiritual power to ensure that she could explode with a thunderous attack at any time. Essence//book Pavilion First Update. After waiting for a while, the teleportation array in front of her finally moved. The void began to distort and a vague figure appeared from it. Yu Huajin, who was already prepared, was instantly surrounded by lightning. She raised her hand and a huge thunderbolt blasted towards the figure. At the same time, her eyes widened as if she wanted to see how that person would die with her own eyes. At the same time, the sound of a sword rang out. Sword chi swept out from the sword gourd of Li Taibai's doppelganger. On the other side, Lu Ye's ghostly figure suddenly appeared 300 feet away. He unsheathed his Pan Shan saber and his spiritual power surged. On the blade, the saber was dazzling. Both of them moved quickly because this was the best opportunity to sneak attack Yu Huajin. She was focused almost all of her energy on the teleportation array. Even if she was prepared, she wouldn't be too thorough. However, immediately after, Lu Ye's figure stopped. The sword dragon that Li Taibai's doppelganger had just condensed also froze. Lin Yu's expression changed even more. She flashed in front of Li Taibai and the spiritual power around her surged into a barrier. The reason for everyone's change. It was because another figure suddenly appeared in the field. A figure that no one had noticed. She really was like a ghost. She appeared without warning and was almost sticking to Yu Huajin's back. Before she appeared, she didn't reveal any aura. After she appeared, there was no killing intent at all. However, a cold light suddenly appeared. Yu Huajin's body suddenly stiffened and the thunderbolt in front of her bloomed. The power also dissipated. In the space around them, the lightning teleportation array received a message from Lu Yi. This chapter isn't finished. Chapter 1101. Lu Yi helper Yu Daiwei, who had blessed herself with many defenses, appeared. The expected violent attack didn't come. There was only a slight power of thunder. It swept away to the side. The reason why she agreed to help Lu Yi was that she was confident in her own strength. Her cultivation was only one level lower than Yu Huajin's. As long as she prepared her defenses in advance, even if she was attacked by Yu Huajin at the end of the teleportation, her life wouldn't be in danger. But at this moment, she felt that Yu Huajin's attack, it was too weak. When she recovered from her daze, she saw the tip of the sword sticking out of Yu Huajin's chest at a glance. Her eyes couldn't help but shrink. This was definitely a fatal wound because the place where the tip of the sword penetrated was the heart. With such an injury, Yu Huajin wouldn't be able to survive. She didn't see who attacked Yu Huajin because the person was completely behind Yu Huajin and was tightly covered by Yu Huajin. She originally thought that even if Lu Yi took advantage of Yu Huajin's full strength to launch a sneak attack, he wouldn't be able to do his best. At that time, he might need her help. But now, it seemed that it saved some trouble. But soon, she was surprised to find that the person who launched the sneak attack wasn't Lu Yi. Because this guy was standing not far away with a knife. She was stunned. Then, she looked behind Yu Huajin in surprise. Please enter com to view the latest update. Chapter 1101. Lu Yi Helper. Chapter 1102. On the other side, Lin Yu was protecting a young man in white behind her like she was protecting a little chick. As far as she knew, he should be one of the two heroes of the war province, sword cultivator Li Tai Bai. The sword dragon hovering above his head undoubtedly explained his identity. Yu Daiwei couldn't understand who had ambushed Yu Huajin. Until Yu Huajin roared, "What a similar scene to Thought Moon Immortal." Half a year ago, she was stopped by Zhao Chen on her way to Shocking Waves Lake Pass. When she was talking to Zhao Chen, she had been ambushed by Thought Moon Immortal. That time, Thought Moon Immortal had shown mercy and didn't take her life. But this time was different. Yu Huajin could clearly feel her vitality rapidly fading away. Because of the pain and anger, Yu Huajin's eyes trembled violently. She couldn't believe that Thought Moon Immortal would really kill her. Indeed, Thought Moon Immortal had warned her not to come within 100 kilometers of Luya after severely injuring her last time. How could she take it to heart? For someone like her, she would definitely investigate Thought Moon Immortal's movements before taking action. Thought Moon Immortal couldn't be secretly protecting Luya all the time, right? As far as she knew, Thought Moon Immortal had been exploring the Earth fissure recently and hadn't returned. She shouldn't have appeared here at all. But Thought Moon Immortal had snuck in here long ago and had been hiding, waiting for the moment she took action to launch a sneak attack. She had grasped the timing very well. Even if her condition had slipped, she was still a ninth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Last time, she had been ambushed because Zhao Chen had distracted her. This time, she had been ambushed because she had let her guard down. Under normal circumstances, even Thought Moon Immortal couldn't pose such a fatal threat to a cultivator of the same level so easily. Ghost cultivators were always able to hibernate like this. They didn't make a move, but once they did, it would be earth-shattering. In an instant, Yu Huajin understood one thing. The information she had received was wrong, and she didn't dare to think about how Moon Immortal could interfere with her intelligence. "I've said it before, but it seems you didn't take it to heart." Thought Moon Immortal's soft voice sounded in her ear, but it was like a soul-stirring sound. Update without error at Yu Huajin's expression suddenly became flustered. It was not because she was about to die. When she carried out this plan, she was already prepared to die. Even if she was lucky enough to survive today, she would die one day. The reason why she was flustered was because a completely unfamiliar figure had appeared in front of the teleportation formation. It was not Luya as she had imagined. The other party was a woman with extremely powerful spiritual energy fluctuations, at least on the level of an 8th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Furthermore, the surface of her body was covered in layers of defensive spirit technique. At the same time, there was also an artifact revolving around her, giving her a very alert posture. The other party obviously knew that he would be attacked as soon as he appeared, so he had prepared himself in advance. Luya knew that he was going to kill him. This strange woman was a substitute he had called over, a helper, just to attract his attention. Saber. In an instant, Yu Huajin saw through the truth. Sorrow filled her heart. She knew that she had been betrayed. Not only had the myriad Devil Ridge betrayed her, but the person she trusted the most had also betrayed her. She could not blame anyone. In the end, she had chosen a path that no one could tolerate. At the last moment before her vitality dissipated, she suddenly turned her head. A pair of gloomy eyes stared at Li Tai Bai, who was being protected behind Lin Yu. Raging flames burned in her old eyes. It was not a manifestation of pure anger, but real flames, pale white flames. Then, a venomous voice came from her mouth. Soul Flame Fusion. As the violent spiritual energy surged, raging flames swept out and wrapped her whole body. Nian Yu Xian sensed that something was wrong. With a shake of her willow leaf dagger, she shattered the last of her vitality. Almost at the same time, Li Tai Bai's clone let out a muffled groan. The sword dragon that had been hovering above his head collapsed uncontrollably. His body swayed slightly and was about to fall to the ground. Lin Yu, who was protecting him, turned pale with fright. She turned around to support him. However, there was another person who moved faster than her. It was Lu Ye. The sudden appearance of Nian Yuxian was a pleasant surprise. If he had known that Nian Yuxian was here, he would not have needed to make so many preparations. He had thought that this trip would be a life-and-death battle. Since Nian Yuxian had made a move, there was no need for him to waste any more time. However, he did not let his guard down. When a person was at a dead end, it would not be strange for them to do anything crazy. Pale white. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1102. Death. The point of no return. When the flames emerged from Yu Huajin's eyes, her clone was already on guard. Her main body had already rushed towards her clone. Therefore, she was able to support her clone before Lin Yu. Sensing the change in her clone, Lu Ye immediately understood the terror of Yu Huajin's final counterattack. This should be a spiritual energy secret technique. She burned the power of her own spiritual energy. In a desperate situation, she did not seek to protect herself. She only sought to take her enemy down with her. After this move, regardless of whether her enemy died or not, Yu Huajin would not be able to survive. Lin Yu was right. Comparatively speaking, Yu Huajin's killing intent towards Li Tai Bai was greater. This was because Tan Shu had indeed died under his sword. This was something that could not be faked. It was also something that everyone had witnessed. Therefore, when she realized that she was about to die, she resolutely used this secret technique on Li Tai Bai. The reason why the clone could exist like a living person without revealing any flaws was that the root of the talent tree had taken away a part of Lu Ye's strength, including his vitality, spiritual energy, and spiritual energy. Of course, Lu Yi could restore this part of his strength at any time, so it would not affect his strength too much. The eruption of a ninth-order divine sea realm cultivator burning his own soul in a desperate situation was simply too terrifying. The huge spiritual energy impact instantly annihilated a part of the clone's soul, causing Lu Yi to directly lose contact with it and no longer be able to sense the existence of its soul. Lu Yi secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the clone had attracted Yu Huajin's hatred. Otherwise, if this secret technique had been aimed at his main body, even with the soul-suppressing tower protecting his soul would have been shaken and his soul might have been torn apart. The current situation was that although the clone's soul had been annihilated, it had not disappeared. After all, the root of the talent tree was still there, and so was the clone's vitality and spiritual energy. For Lu Yi, all he needed to do was replenish the clone's spiritual energy. It was not too troublesome. Lin Yu, however, did not know this. Seeing Li Tai Bai faint, she could not help but be shocked. Junior brother Tai Bai. This voice reached Yu Huajin's ears, and when her vitality finally dissipated, a smile appeared on her face. No matter what, she had avenged her grandson. The pale white flames that burned Yu Huajin's soul disappeared, and Thought Moon Immortal pulled out her willow catkin short sword. Yu Huajin's body fell limply to the ground. She did not pay attention to the chaos on Li Tai Bai's side. In her opinion, Li Tai Bai was a member of Myriad Demon Ridge, so his life and death had nothing to do with her. She had only come here to protect Lu Yi. Now that she had killed Yu Huajin, the biggest threat was gone, and her mission was complete. Holding the willow catkin short sword, she raised her eyes and looked at Yu Daiwei in front of her indifferently. Yu Daiwei did not dare to move, and her expression became complicated. After the clone received the soul power from the main body, it immediately opened its eyes. Lin Yu stepped forward nervously and asked with concern, "Junior brother Tai Bai, are you all right? Is your soul injured?" She could also see the danger of Yu Huajin's last secret technique. Logically speaking, Li Tai Bai should not be in a good condition if he was suddenly attacked, but now it seemed that he was fine. The clone shook its head. "My soul is fine. I've made senior sister worry." Lin Yu said, "Check carefully. Don't leave any hidden dangers." Although the clone knew that there was no need to check anything, It still did as he was told. Lu Yi just stood to the side and remained silent. Not far away, Yu Daiwei's voice suddenly sounded, "Lu Yi, look over here." Lu Yi looked over and saw that she was standing on the teleportation array, staring at Thought Moon Immortal. However, their expressions were completely different. Thought Moon Immortal's face was full of scrutiny, but Yu Daiwei's entire body was tense, as if she was facing a great enemy. If it were an ordinary ghost cultivator, it would naturally not be enough to make Yu Daiwei so nervous. As everyone knew, ghost cultivator's ability to fight head-on was better than other sects. Her faction was a notch worse, so even if her cultivation was lower, she would still be able to level one. Against a ghost cultivator, it was not a problem to keep her life. The key point was that the one standing in front of her was not a normal ghost cultivator, but Thought Moon Immortal. In addition to being a ghost cultivator, she was also a sword cultivator. Moreover, she was someone who fought side by side with Tai Shan during the same period. She had heard Tai Shan talk about Thought Moon Immortal more than once. She was definitely one of the strongest members of 9 regions. She had no confidence that she could defeat the other party, especially under the premise that they were so close to each other. If she really made a move, her weak body as a magical cultivator would not be able to withstand it. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1102. Ghost Cultivator. The point of no return. She received several flying swords from the other party. She didn't expect to bump into Thought Moon Immortal in this place. If she had known that she was here, she would not have agreed to Lu Ye's request. Now, she was entrusted with a small favor, but she was trapped here. In particular, the way Thought Moon Immortal looked at her made her feel very uneasy, as if a sharp sword would stab her at any time. She had no choice but to ask for help from Lu Yi. Seeing her like this, Lu Yi wanted to laugh, but after all, she was invited by herself, and she also helped to divert Yu Huajin's attention. I can't do something like burning the bridge after crossing the river. She didn't look like a good person. Kill her or not? Thought Moon Immortal asked. Yu Daiwei held her breath and stared at Lu Yi nervously. She was afraid that the word kill would come out of his mouth, and then she would be dead. Why do I look like a bad person, but I don't dare to say it out loud? Although she's not a good person, she was also entrusted by me to come here, and there are some things that will fall on her later. Senior Sister Nian, please spare her dog life, Lu Yi said softly. Yu Daiwei glared at him fiercely, apparently very dissatisfied with him. It's still your job to be a dog. Please enter M.com to view the latest update. Chapter 1102. Ghost Cultivator. The point of no return. Chapter 1103. With Lu Ye's guarantee, Thought Moon Immortal finally withdrew her killing intent. She lightly spat out a word, "Get lost." Yu Daiwei felt as if she had been granted amnesty. She turned around and flew out. Only when she flew far away did a voice come from afar, "Lu Ye, don't forget your promise." The smell of blood filled the air. Yu Huajin's corpse was lying horizontally. Lin Yu was still nervously protecting Li Tai-bai behind her, her gaze fixed on Thought Moon Immortal. Compared to the old and frail Yu Huajin, the sudden appearance of Thought Moon Immortal undoubtedly made her feel more nervous. She could let Lu Yi freely enter and exit the Dark Moon Forest Pass under the premise of cooperation between the two sides. And no matter what, Li Tai-bai and Lu Yi had some friendship. But this didn't mean that just anyone could barge into the pass she guarded, especially a powerful ghost cultivator like Thought Moon Immortal. Yu Huajin was killed by her in one blow. If Thought Moon Immortal was willing, she couldn't protect herself. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel a sense of crisis. Fortunately, she also knew that Thought Moon Immortal probably wouldn't kill again. Just as the myriad Devil Ridge wanted to maintain the fragile peace between the two camps, the Grand Heaven Alliance also had the same idea. "Why is Senior Sister Nian here?" Lu Yi asked. Thought Moon Immortal had a good relationship with Shui Yuan. She was once the right-hand man of Big Senior Brother, so although there was a gap in age, It wasn't a problem to call her senior sister, especially now that Lu Yi had already reached the Divine Sea. However, he could vaguely guess that it shouldn't be a coincidence that Thought Moon Immortal appeared here. Obviously, she had received some news and had been secretly following Yu Huajin. Otherwise, she wouldn't have grasped the timing so well. Passing by. Thought Moon Immortal replied lightly. She naturally wouldn't tell Lu Yi the whole story. There was no need for that. Now that Yu Huajin was dead, the biggest threat had been removed. No one would secretly want to kill Lu Yi in the future. Lu Yi was speechless. In vast Sky City, in the headmaster's small courtyard, the headmaster and Zhao Chun of the Heaven Yuan sect sat across from each other, sipping tea. The two of them had been sitting there for several hours already. Neither of them spoke, but they had drunk several pots of tea. Zhao Chun suddenly showed a sad expression and slowly got up. "Brother Tang, this matter is over, goodbye." The sect leader nodded and didn't say anything, nor did he send him off. Zhao Chun walked out of the house and looked up. He saw a sky full of stars and the night sky was bright. He let out a deep sigh. The feelings of the past could only be recalled. Some things couldn't be stopped, and some people couldn't be persuaded. Since they couldn't be stopped or persuaded, they could only nip the problem in the bud. Even if they couldn't bear it, even if they were sad, they still had to give it up. At his level of cultivation, the interests of the sect had long surpassed personal feelings. He had to make plans for the entire Heavenly Yuan sect, and could no longer be someone's senior brother. He had also thought of continuing to stop her, just like he had done the last time. However, it was meaningless. Moreover, that junior sister no longer had any attachment. Now, she was only filled with hatred and resentment. At this time, this kind of obsession was very dangerous. In the end, he had chosen a path of no return. Dark Moon Forest Pass. Thought Moon Immortal had already left with Yu Huajin's corpse. Before leaving, she didn't say much to Lu Yi. It was as if she really was just passing by and casually killed a small character who wanted to harm Lu Yi. Lin Yu breathed a long sigh of relief, as if a big stone had been lifted from her heart. Lu Yi also left. He didn't use the transmission array, but instead flew out of the Dark Moon Forest Pass. After traveling 100 kilometers, Yu Daiwei was waiting. When she saw Lu Yi, she couldn't help but look behind him. She was still worried, so she used her divine sense to investigate the surroundings. Lu Yi looked at her. "What are you looking for?" Yu Daiwei was very careful, and with a sneaky look, she asked, "Did Thought Moon Immortal follow you? Lead the way." Lu Yi urged impatiently. Yu Daiwei curled her lips. However, she also knew that if Thought Moon Immortal had followed them secretly, she might not have been able to find her with her ability. So, even if she tried to investigate, it would be useless. Looking Lu Yi up and down, she clicked her tongue in wonder. "So you're already a fourth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator." She didn't pay much attention before, but when Lu Ye's saber intent and spirit chi surged in the Dark Moon Forest Pass, she suddenly discovered that Lu Ye's cultivation had reached the fourth-order Divine Sea Realm. First update at more than a year ago, Lu Yi, who had been missing for a long time, didn't know where to go. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1103 Divine Sea Realm. Seeing Taishan, when Lu Yi returned to the 9 provinces, he had only just broken through to the Divine Sea Realm. In just over a year, his cultivation had advanced by 4 minor realms. Such a cultivation speed was terrifying. She faintly realized that it was because he had broken through to the 4th-order Divine Sea Realm that Lu Yi took the initiative to ask to see Senior, because he probably felt that he was qualified to escape from Senior. Thinking about it again, Lu Yi really did have such qualifications. This guy's true strength was always several minor realms higher than his true realm. Thinking back to when he had just broken through to the Divine Sea Realm, Lu Yi had already been difficult to deal with. Now, he was even stronger than before. Even if Senior took action, how confident could he be in capturing him alive? What's more, Senior valued him greatly, so he might not necessarily hate him. worthy of being a person favored by the heavens. Yu Daiwei had never envied anyone in her life, but facing Lu Yi, she still felt a little uncomfortable. Lead the way, Lu Yi urged again. Just as Yu Daiwei thought, now that he had broken through to the fourth-order divine sea realm, he felt that he could escape from Tai Shan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to see Tai Shan. There were some things that needed to be discussed openly with him. Not for anything else, but the current situation in the 9 states was not good. The forces in Tai Shan's hands were an unstable factor, and if he took advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble, it would only make the situation worse, so Lu Yi had to appease him. Also, Lu Yi wanted to talk to Tai Shan about borrowing his subordinate's strength. He had to return to the blood-refining world eventually, and it would be useless for him to go back alone, so he needed to bring a large number of helpers. Where would these helpers come from? The forces under Tai Shan's command were the best choice, and they were also ready-made choices. Of course, if it were anyone else, Tai Shan might not care. But this matter involved his eldest senior brother, so it was impossible for Tai Shan to remain indifferent. First update at these 2 points were Lu Ye's plan. As for whether Tai Shan believed him or not, Lu Yi didn't need to worry about it. Before returning from the blood-refining world, his eldest senior brother had given him a lot of instructions. Yu Daiwei led the way with Lu Yi following closely behind. This woman probably had some resentment in her heart, so she deliberately wanted to embarrass Lu Yi while flying. She flew faster and faster, waiting for Lu Yi to beg her to slow down so that she could regain her face. Unexpectedly, no matter how fast she flew, Lu Yi could easily keep up with her, which made her very depressed. The plan in her heart was ruined, so she could only slow down. Flying like before consumed a lot of her energy. Flying from dark to dawn, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong in this direction. This was because from the map, it seemed to be heading towards Fan Mountain. His heart skipped a beat. Is Tai Shan over at Mount Tum? Fan Mountain was vast and sparsely populated. Now, other than the Jade Blood sect, there was only the Ziwei Taoist Palace. On many spiritual peaks there were many caves of rogue cultivators. If Tai Shan hid in one of the caves and pretended to be a rogue cultivator, no one would be able to find him. Yu Daiwei said. His Excellency deliberately chose that place to meet you. Even I can't confirm his whereabouts, so you don't need to inquire about it. This was normal. For someone like Tai Shan, it was not good for him to show off in front of others. After hiding for so many years, there were probably hiding places everywhere in the 9 states. After entering Mount Tung, Lu Yi looked down and frowned. Fan Mountain used to be a picturesque place with lush mountains and clear waters, a place filled with outstanding people. However, at this moment, many of the spirit peaks were barren and devoid of life. This was clearly the result of the insect clan's rampage. Fan Mountain was not the only place like this. Currently, most of the 9 states were in the same situation. When they reached a nameless mountain, Yu Daiwei stopped and flew over. Lu Yi followed closely. Landing on the peak, Lu Yi saw a familiar figure waiting for his arrival. It was Tai Shan. Beside him was a burly figure, but looking at his dull expression, it should be a Dao soldier. Lu Yi could not help but think of Dao Shisan. When he returned from the blood-refining realm, Dao Shisan did not come back with him. Presumably, the long-distance teleportation consumed too much energy, so Jiuzhou's Tianji cut off Dao Shisan's teleportation and left him in the blood-refining realm. Sit. Tai Shan smiled warmly, making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Lu Yi didn't stand on ceremony and sat across from him in a carefree manner. The first time he saw Tai Shan, he was still young. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1103 Mysterious Seeing Tai Shan. After all, he was only a 5th-order True Lake Realm cultivator at that time, but now he was a 4th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. His cultivation had crossed an entire great realm. Moreover, he had seen dozens of cultivators stronger than Tai Shan and had been trained by them for several months. Lu Yi could now be considered an experienced and knowledgeable person. It could be said that in the 9 states, there was no one who could move him in terms of power and influence. Moreover, Tai Shan was not an overbearing person. He had always given off a warm and amiable feeling. Yu Daiwei sat quietly to the side and took out a tea set to boil tea. "Little friend, why are you looking for me?" As the tea fragrance filled the air, Tai Shan looked at Lu Yi with a smile. No matter what Lu Yi wanted from him, for him, Lu Yi taking the initiative to contact him was what he wanted to see the most. Their last contact had left a deep impression on Tai Shan, and he had a general understanding of Lu Ye's character. Therefore, he knew that if he wanted Lu Yi to submit, force would not work. He could only persuade him with reason, move him with emotion, and plot slowly. _O_M The current situation in the 9 states was a good opportunity for him. As long as he could solve the problem of the insect plague, he could set off a wave of momentum and let the name of primal chaos spread throughout the 9 states, attracting people to join him. He had prepared everything. Now all he needed was Lu Ye's nod, and the third faction, primal chaos, would appear out of nowhere and clear the calamities of the 9 states. At that time, whether it was primal chaos or Lu Yi, they would become the saviors of the 9 states. With such kindness, would there be any need to worry about primal chaos not being able to carry forward? Please enter .com in your browser to view. Chapter 1103 Mysterious Seeing Tai Shan. Chapter 1104. At that time, Lu Yi would stand in front of the stage while he would hide behind the scenes. The 2 sides would work together to gradually erode the power of Haotian Alliance and Wanmo Ridge. One day, there would only be 1 camp left in the 9 regions. At that time, there would be no more confrontations between the 2 camps, and there would be no more endless battles and killings. For this goal, he had concealed his identity and prepared for decades. Now Lu Yi, a person who was favored by the heavens, had appeared. It could be said that the time, place, and people were all right. Everything was complete except for the east wind. While Tai Shan was thinking about it, Lu Yi was also pondering. He was thinking about how to lay his cards on the table with Tai Shan. He didn't have that much patience and time. He wasn't good at schemes and tricks. His experience and knowledge in the blood-refining world were his unique advantages. Therefore, some things were better to be straightforward, just like the strategy he used to deal with Yu Huajin. Therefore, he said, "Senior brother Tai Shan, please excuse me." Tai Shan looked at him with a puzzled face. He didn't know why Lu Yi suddenly called him senior brother. Such a title was not to be casually called, especially under the premise that his subordinate Yu Daiwei had once captured Lu Yi alive and detained him in a small secret realm for several months. Lu Yi stared at him with burning eyes and said calmly, "There is a birthmark the size of a fingernail on your left buttocks near the waist. There are 3 hairs on it, 1 long and 2 short. The longer one is darker in color." The smile on Tai Shan's face suddenly became stiff, and the corner of his eyes twitched visibly. _O_Yu Daiwei, who was quietly brewing tea, couldn't help but raise her head. Her eyes widened as she looked at Lu Yi. She instinctively felt that Lu Yi was talking nonsense, but it was a little unusual for him to talk so much. She turned her head to look at Tai Shan with a look of inquiry. If she didn't have enough willpower, she was afraid that she would ask if it was true. Tai Shan noticed her gaze and turned to stare at her. Yu Daiwei quickly lowered her head and continued to brew tea. She looked down, but in fact, her ears were almost pricked up. Her curiosity was burning. "What are you talking about, little friend?" Tai Shan frowned. The way this conversation unfolded was completely different from what he had expected. In his mind, Lu Yi might come here to ask him about some more secretive matters, or perhaps ask about the mysteries of the disc. He had already thought of many excuses, so he wouldn't hide too much from Lu Yi, because he felt that. Why right now, Lu Yi had enough qualifications, but the moment Lu Yi opened his mouth, Tai Shan. Lu Yi continued to expose him, Senior brother has a sword wound under your third rib. You were injured by an 8th order divine sword cultivator when you were 30. Senior brother once liked a woman named May but that woman thought that senior brother's appearance was mediocre and his background was ordinary, so she didn't take a fancy to senior brother. In the end, she followed a handsome disciple of a great sect. As a result, they both died in a great battle. Senior brother was sad for a long time and even shed tears. So after that, senior apprentice brother didn't like those young and inexperienced girls anymore. Senior apprentice brother prefers more mature women who are more charming. Udaiwei, who had been listening attentively, quickly straightened her body, intentionally or unintentionally revealing a myriad of amorous feelings. Also, senior brother's alcohol tolerance is bad. If he doesn't use his spirit chi to dissolve the alcohol, he will get drunk after a single pot. Every time he drinks too much, he likes to brag and then find someone to fight. After the fight, he will find a random place to lie down. Once, senior brother accidentally entered a farmhouse and was picked up by a widowed woman. Enough! Tai Shan quickly interrupted Lu Yi, the corners of his eyes twitching. He really didn't dare let him continue. If he did, he would lose all prestige in front of his subordinates. He snorted coldly. I really didn't know that Nian Yuxian is a gossipy woman who likes to gossip behind people's backs. Lu Yi looked at him calmly. Senior brother thinks that senior sister Nian told me these things. Otherwise, senior brother really thinks that senior sister Nian knows so many secrets? I have worked with her for many years and we are like siblings. What does she not know? Although he said so, he still had some doubts. It wasn't strange for Nian Yuxian to know ordinary secrets. After all, they had been together for so many years. But how could Nian Yuxian know the length of the hair on his birthmark? Other than himself, only one other person knew about this kind of thing. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1104. Secret after a great battle, when the blood was washed away in the river, that person even reached out and plucked those 3 hairs. When he thought of this, his heart trembled, and he looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. Lu Yi said lightly, "It seems that senior brother has some guesses." Tai Shan's expression changed, and his aura began to fluctuate. Udaiwei's expression also became serious. She had never seen her lord like this. "Impossible," Tai Shan shouted in a low voice. "Everyone who knows senior brother thinks that you have been dead for many years, but in fact, senior brother is still alive and well. Senior brother can fake his death to escape, why can't others do the same? I buried his bones with my own hand." Tai Shan stared at Lu Yi. Lu Yi said, "Then senior brother, do you know how I know your name? I have never mentioned you in front of senior sister Nian." As he said this, he slowly stood up and walked in front of the Tao soldier. He raised his hand and pointed at the Tao soldier's heart. Udaiwei said warily, "What are you doing?" Lu Yi said, "The refining method of this kind of Tao soldier is flawed, so the Tao soldier refined has very low intelligence, and if there is a special method, it is very easy to make them like this." With a push of spiritual power, the Tao soldier suddenly closed his eyes and fell to the ground softly. He snored and fell into a deep sleep. Tai Shan watched quietly. Even someone as calm as him was extremely chaotic at this moment. This was because he suddenly realized that something that he thought was impossible seemed to be the truth. This made him really incredulous. "Senior brother, if you still don't believe me, I can swear on the heavenly secret oath." Lu Yi sat back down again. Tai Shan didn't say anything. He tried to calm the chaos in his mind. After a long while, he said, "Do you think that the heavenly secret oath still has the ability to restrain you?" Lu Yi frowned. "Senior brother, what do you mean? The heavenly secret claims to be fair and just, but in fact, it is also biased. Especially for people like you who are favored by the heavenly secret, there will always be tolerance. If you don't believe me, you can try." If he didn't say it, Lu Yi didn't care too much. Now that he said it, Lu Yi remembered something. When he swore the heavenly secret oath in front of Yu Daiwei, he did not feel the restraint of the heavenly secret oath. He turned to look at Yu Daiwei and said, "Jade blood sex, Lu Yi respectfully requests the heavenly secret oath to bear witness. This disciple likes this woman very much. If I dislike her in the slightest, may I be struck by lightning." After waiting for a moment, there was nothing unusual. Yu Daiwei looked at him with her eyes. Lu Yi showed a troubled expression. "I originally wanted to swear on the heavenly secret oath to gain senior brother's trust, but now it seems that this method doesn't seem to work. I don't know how to make senior brother believe me. I believe." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and looked at him with some surprise. Tai Shan said, "In this world, only he and I know the refining method of Dao soldiers. It could also be that I obtained some handwritten notes or something that was passed down." Tai Shan shook his head slowly. He wouldn't be so bored as to record these things. He looked up at Lu Yi. "He is really still alive?" Lu Yi nodded. "He is alive and well." Tai Shan showed a puzzled expression. If a person like him is still alive, how could the Jade Blood sect be so lonely? How could he not stir up the storm all these years? Because he is no longer in the 9 regions. If he is not in the 9 regions, then where is he? A region called the Blood Refining Realm. Lu Yi picked up the tea in front of him and took a sip. "Senior brother, have you ever thought about why I lost contact with you for more than 2 years after I was detained in that small secret realm? Where did I go during that time?" "You went to the Blood Refining Realm." Tai Shan sensed something. Lu Yi nodded. "When I was detained in the small secret realm that day, Dao 13 was guarding the entrance of the secret realm. I had no way to escape, so I thought of a way to break the foundation of the secret realm. Originally, I thought that after the secret realm collapsed, I would be able to escape. Who knew that when the secret realm collapsed, I did not return to the 9 regions. Instead, I was sent to the Blood Refining Realm." The situation of the Blood Refining Realm appeared in front of Tai Shan as Lu Yi explained. He heard Feng Wujiang raising the banner there and creating a Pure Land for the human race. In the Pure Land, even the dozens of old seniors who had been famous for a long time were under his command. Tai Shan couldn't help but laugh out loud, revealing a gratified expression as if he was worthy of being called Tai Shan. He even had a trace of fascination. When he heard that the human race lived a hard life in the Blood Refining Realm and that the Jade Blood Holy Land had to be besieged by the Blood race every few years, his expression became solemn. Yu Daiwei was even more dumbfounded. Her cultivation was indeed higher than Lu Ye's, and she was more knowledgeable. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1104. Blood Refining Realm Secret. There were many, but she had never experienced anything as bizarre as Lu Ye's. She finally understood why His Excellency had chosen Lu Ye. For someone like him who was favored by the heavens, the things he had experienced were unimaginable for ordinary people. When a lot of information about an entire realm was presented in front of Tai Shan, the last bit of doubt in his heart disappeared. What Lu Yi said was too bizarre, but after careful investigation, there were no flaws. Lu Yi wouldn't deliberately fabricate such a realm just to deceive him. Without personal experience, these things couldn't be fabricated. After a long time, Lu Yi finished talking about the Blood Refining Realm. Tai Shan keenly sensed the problem. As you said, the Blood Race's encirclement will continue, but the Jade Blood Holy Land's outer defense line has been broken. Won't it be very dangerous when the Blood Race attacks next time? That's right, so I have to rush back before the Blood Race encircles the Jade Blood Holy Land. Moreover, I have to bring a group of people back. The Jade Blood Holy Land doesn't lack top combat power, but they lack numbers. So Senior Martial Brother Tai Shan, if you still remember your past friendship with my eldest Senior Martial Brother, I want to ask you for help. Essence / first update of Book Pavilion. Please enter m.com to view the latest update. Chapter 1104. Blood Refining Realm Secret. Chapter 1105. Lu Yi had also considered whether he should report the matter of the blood refinement realm to Grand Sky City so that Grand Sky City could organize manpower. If that was really the case, it would save him a lot of trouble. However, this was ultimately a matter of another realm, and Grand Sky Alliance might not be willing to interfere. Mobilizing troops from one realm and going on an expedition to another realm was extremely dangerous, and there might not be many benefits to be gained. It was very difficult to form a large-scale organization. This was different from the last time when the cultivators of the 9 states had killed their way into the Peerless Continent. At that time, the Peerless Continent had already been enveloped by Tianji of the 9 states, and cultivators could obtain military merits by killing enemies there. Moreover, the battles on the Peerless Continent were only limited to the Cloud River tier, and the cultivators were very active. Update without error at thus, if Lu Yi really wanted to bring helpers over, he could only think of a way himself. Tai Shan's side was undoubtedly a very good choice. Lu Yi did not know how powerful the forces under Tai Shan's command were, but from the few interactions he had, Tai Shan's tentacles might not have reached the upper echelons of the 2 great camps, but the forces he secretly controlled were definitely not weak. Otherwise, he would not have the intention to establish a 3rd camp. Since he had this determination and courage, then he should have a corresponding foundation. If he could agree to this matter, when the time came, he would be able to secretly mobilize people, and the number of people he could bring over would definitely not be small. When? Tai Shan asked. Lu Yi shook his head. I'm not sure, but I know that I will definitely be summoned by Tianji again. This was a vague feeling. After all, Tianji could not just send him to the blood refinement realm for no reason and leave him alone after seeing the suffering of the people there, and the Jade Blood Holy Land on the verge of collapse. If that was the case, then his trip to the blood refinement realm last time would be a dry joke, and Tianji would not do such a useless thing. He believed that Tianji sent him over last time with a deeper meaning. Thus, when the time was right, he would definitely have a chance to return to the blood refinement realm. This was something that Lu Yi firmly believed ever since he returned from the blood refinement realm. I can agree to this matter, but you have to promise me one thing. Lu Yi sighed and said, what senior brother Tai Shan mentioned, my eldest senior brother also told me that the 3rd camp isn't reliable. Since ancient times, the Haotian Alliance and Wanmo Ridge have been opposing each other for thousands of years. Such a situation is deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even if senior brother really creates a 3rd camp, it will only make the situation more chaotic. Back then, eldest senior brother also had such thoughts, but he gave it up in the end. That's why he handed that thing over to someone else for safekeeping. Eldest senior brother said that he understands your painstaking efforts and original intentions, but he still hopes that you can temporarily give up this idea. The situation in the 9 regions is already worrying enough, but at least it's clear now. If you still want to do so, you can make a decision after you go to the blood refining world and talk to him. If you still want to do so, he won't stop you anymore. Instead, he will help you. Tai Shan suddenly smiled. From the looks of it, he is still alive. Huh. Lu Yi frowned and looked at him. He immediately reacted. Tai Shan had never fully believed him, but when he told him about the token to establish a 3rd camp, he truly believed him. Because even eldest senior brother's wife, who kept it, was not clear about the function of the token, and thought Moon Immortal was also not clear about it. As for Lu Yi, if eldest senior brother did not personally say it, Lu Yi would not dare to believe that there was such a strange thing in this world. Today, I came here mainly to tell senior brother about this. Senior brother can think about it quietly. If you have a decision, just let senior sister you send me a message. Yu Daiwei was in a trance. Originally, under Lu Ye's request, she brought him to see his honor. She thought that this trip would achieve his honor's wish no matter what. Who knew that after a conversation, they seemed to have turned from enemies to friends? He even called her senior sister Yu. It made her feel embarrassed. In addition, the current situation in 9 states is unstable, and the common people are suffering. I ask Senior Brother Tai Shan to be merciful and not easily stir up the situation. Tai Shan laughed. In your opinion, what kind of person am I? Lu Yi told the truth. In order to achieve my goal, some people will do anything. Tai Shan seemed to have not expected Lu Yi to have such an evaluation. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "It seems that what you said is not wrong, but to be honest, I hate conspiracies and tricks the most, and I also hate those who live behind the scenes and play tricks the most. When I followed your eldest senior brother, I didn't have to care about anything. I just needed to let go of my shoulders and do it. Wherever your eldest senior brother pointed, I would lead the army to fight. However, people will always change. Different environments, different responses. I didn't expect that such days would come back one day. Lu Ye, you underestimate me. What I just asked you to promise is not about the creation of primal chaos, but when you return to the blood-refining realm, I will follow you. I want to see with my own eyes whether what you said is true or false. If it's true, I'll thank you. If it's false, I'll kill you. Even if you're Wu Zhang's junior brother in name, I won't show any mercy." Lu Yi nodded, "No problem. When the time comes, senior brother won't be able to slack off even if he wants to." Tai Shan stretched out his hand to him and looked at him with burning eyes. "The heavenly secret oath is useless to you, so I won't make you swear. I look forward to that day." Lu Yi raised his hand and clasped his hands together, his voice calm and firm. "That day will come, and it won't be long." Yu Daiwei watched quietly from the side. Even though she was already an 8th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, and even though she wasn't young, she still couldn't understand how men got along with each other. However, she understood one thing. Lu Ye's visit this time seemed to have taken care of her sex Sir, and Sir seemed to be quite willing to be taken care of by him and was even looking forward to it. What kind of charisma did this character, who had stirred up a great storm in the 9 provinces in the past, have that even Senior fell head over heels for him? She was suddenly looking forward to it. "Since you call me Senior Brother, I don't have anything good to give you, so consider this a meeting gift." Tai Shan suddenly raised his hand and sent something flying towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi caught it and found that it was a wine jar. However, he wasn't naive enough to think that it was really just a jar of wine. Just as he was puzzled, Tai Shan threw him a jade slip and said slowly, "The biggest problem in the current situation of the 9 provinces is how to solve the problem of the suppression of cultivators by the magnetic field deep underground. If this problem can be solved, then the cultivators of the 9 provinces can kill their way into the insect path, go deep underground, and solve the insect disaster from the source. Right now, all the major continents of the 9 provinces have sent out medical and alchemy elites to study this problem and have made some discoveries. For example, the insect blood of the insect race can slightly block the suppression of the magnetic field, but the effect is not great. What is recorded in the jade slip is a special method to refine the insect blood. The jar contains the refined insect blood. If this insect blood is smeared on the ground, it has a very obvious blocking effect on the magnetic field. I have had people try it. After smearing this insect blood and going deep underground, even if they reach the end of the insect path, they will still have about 60% of their strength left." Lu Yi was shocked. 60%? Tai Shan nodded his head. 60%. This was an astonishing ratio. Lu Yi had experienced going deep into the insect path, so he clearly knew how terrifying the suppression was. He was a 3rd-order Divine Sea cultivator, but when he reached the end of the insect path, he would only have the strength of a spirit stream realm cultivator. Therefore, even if someone as strong as the headmaster was, the strength he could display in that kind of environment was not much stronger than his. However, if he had 60% of his strength left, the sect master would be able to display the strength of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. In this way, his ability to protect himself would be greatly increased. If he could find more masters at the sect master's level to join forces, he would have a chance to kill his way out of the insect path and into the insect race's great sealed world. At that time, as long as he blocked the entrance and stabilized his position, the army of the 9 provinces would follow closely behind. Lu Yi immediately understood the importance of this jar of insect blood and the refining method recorded in the jade slip. It could be said that in today's situation, these 2 things were simply the saviors of the 9 provinces. This was a pleasant surprise. He came to Tai Shan this time just to lay his cards on the table and appease him while seeking some help to kill his way back to the blood-refining world. He never thought Tai Shan would actually give him such a great gift in the blink of an eye. Clearly, he had also realized that the current situation of the 9 provinces was detrimental to his plan to save the blood-refining world, which was why he was so eager to resolve the problem of the 9 provinces. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to take something like this out so easily. What puzzled Lu Yi was where this special refining method had come from. First update at as if he had seen through this, Tai Shan smiled. Don't underestimate the heritage of the 9 provinces. The refining method I obtained came from the research of a group of alchemists and medical cultivators in the Mist Province. However, the most crucial results have been intercepted by my people, so the research over there has reached a bottleneck right now. However, I believe it won't be long before they can completely refine it. By then, they'll be able to come up with this refining method again. What he implied shocked Lu Yi, as this meant the forces under Tai Shan's command had already come into contact with the Mist Province. If the Mist Province was like this, what about the other provinces? First update at the Shadow Stone I got Dai Wei to send you before recorded the source of the insect plague. I have the complete recording here. I'll give it to you later. Lu Yi was rather embarrassed. I won't lie to senior brother. Actually, I've been to that great secret realm. Tai Shan looked at him in surprise, but he came to a realization very soon. No wonder you're not interested in those effects at all. So you've already been there. He had already been to the secret realm in person, so he obviously would not be interested in the recordings there. If someone else had said that, Tai Shan would have refused to believe it so easily, but since it came from Lu Yi, there was no room for doubt. People who were favored by the heavenly secrets of this generation could always do things that regular people could not, and they would receive the mysterious protection of the heavenly secrets when they did things. Take what happened today as an example. Lu Yi had chosen this time to find him, discussing many secrets with him, and he had given him the refining method for the insect's blood. Was that not a form of guidance from the heavenly secrets? Please enter com in your browser to view it. Chapter 1106. Originally, Lu Yi planned to return to his sect after meeting Tai Shan. After all, it was just nearby. He missed his second senior sister and master after not seeing them for a long time. However, after getting the jar of insect blood and the jade slip that recorded the special refining method, he could only extinguish the idea in his heart. He bid farewell to Tai Shan and hurried to Haotian City. The sooner he reported these things, the sooner 9 regions could organize people to attack the insect clan's secret realm and solve the problem of insect plague. The current problem in 9 regions was already very serious. Not only the problems that cultivators had to face, but also the problems that mortals had to face. The insect plague had been raging for several years, causing mortals to be unable to farm. Even if there was surplus food in previous years, it was almost consumed now. Every human gathering place was tightening their belt. If this situation continued, there would inevitably be a large number of mortals starving to death. At that time, the foundation of the cultivation world would be shaken. On the way, he sent a message to the hierarch and briefly explained. Half a day later, he arrived at Haotian City and went straight to the hierarch's small courtyard. The hierarch was waiting. Lu Yi presented the insect blood and the jade slip, and the hierarch carefully examined them. After a while, he asked, Did Tai Shan give you these? Yes. That's strange. Why did he suddenly change his temperament? The hierarch was puzzled. Since Lu Yi told him some things about Tai Shan last time, the hierarch had been secretly investigating Tai Shan and the Chaos Organization. However, because Tai Shan was very well hidden, there had been no practical result. The hierarch knew that under the current general situation of 9 regions, such a hidden force was extremely unstable. If Tai Shan continued to be dormant, it would be fine. If he suddenly rose up, it would only make the situation in 9 regions more chaotic. Extremely unstable. If Tai Shan continued to be dormant, it would be fine. If he suddenly rose up, it would only make the situation in 9 regions more chaotic. Moreover, for Tai Shan's scheme, the more chaotic the situation in 9 regions was, the more advantageous it would be for him. Because only in chaos would people seek change. Unexpectedly, he took the initiative to give such important things to Lu Yi. In the current situation, these 2 things were really important. I told him about the blood refinement realm and eldest senior brother. In fact, when I returned from the blood refinement realm, eldest senior brother had some instructions for Mount Tai. I talked to him in detail, and it could be said that I persuaded him. The sect leader understood. He admires your eldest martial brother very much. He probably listens to your eldest martial brother's words. That makes sense. Headmaster, Tai Shan doesn't wish to reveal his existence. Therefore, I'm afraid that the source of these 2 items will fall on this disciple's head. This was also what Tai Shan had specifically instructed Lu Yi before he left. Lu Yi could understand Tai Shan's advice. He believed everything Lu Yi had said, but not all of it. Therefore, he still had to be prepared for the possibility that Lu Yi had lied to him. Without the blood refinement realm, Feng Wujiang would have died long ago. If that was the case, then he would still have to carry out his original plan, which was to build momentum for Lu Yi in advance. The special extraction method of insect blood was simply a life-saving straw for the current 9 provinces. At such a critical moment, anyone who took out this item would be the benefactor of the entire 9 provinces and would receive great prestige. Of course, from Lu Ye's point of view, Tai Shan's action was meaningless. The blood refinement realm did exist, and eldest senior brother was still alive. However, since this was Tai Shan's request, there was no harm in agreeing. The sect leader pondered for a moment. That's fine too. Compared to the great merit of infiltrating the insect race's great secret realm, this merit was undoubtedly greater. Last time, the sect leader had taken away the merit with the intention of protecting Lu Yi. After all, so many top experts had failed to enter the insect race's great secret realm, but Lu Yi, who had just advanced, had entered. It was hard to guarantee that some people wouldn't be afraid of Lu Yi. However, the situation this time was different. This was not only a great merit but also a great kindness. If the insect blood refined by the special method was really useful and could help the 9 provinces solve the insect disaster, then all the cultivators and even mortals in the 9 provinces would owe Lu Yi a favor. At that time, who would dare to harm him? That would be committing a crime against the whole world, and the people of the 9 provinces would poke at him together. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi left Haotian City and leisurely flew to Shocking Waves Lake Pass. This trip to take the initiative to contact Tai Shan for a detailed discussion was undoubtedly a very wise decision, and it also eased his heavy mood a lot. What he had to do now was very simple, he just needed to wait. Whether the insect blood was useful or not, the sect leader needed to personally try it. After all, without practice it would not be persuasive. If it was really useful, the sect leader would convene a meeting to discuss the next action plan. For the time being, Lu Yi could not participate in such high-level meetings, nor did he bother to participate. In some ways, his mentality was somewhat similar to Tai Shan's. He was more used to following orders or doing things according to his whims. He was not the kind of person who would make decisions. The following days passed by peacefully. At Shocking Waves Lake Pass, Lu Yi cultivated in seclusion while refining explosive fire spirit stones and twin chi linking array disc. It had been a month since he broke through to the Fourth Order. Under the cultivation environment of the 9 provinces, coupled with his special cultivation method, his cultivation speed was very fast. Now, he could basically maintain the speed of advancing one realm every few months. With the improvement of his cultivation, the efficiency of refining also increased. Coupled with the fact that he was refining with his clone, the production of explosive fire spirit stones and array discs had greatly increased compared to before. Half a month later, the sect leader sent a message. The insect blood was useful, and as Tai Shan said, even if a cultivator reached the deepest part of the insect path, they could still maintain 60% of their combat strength. This time, the sect leader reached the end of the insect path and saw the door that Lu Yi had seen before. However, he did not rush in rashly because there were countless insects in the insect race's great sealed world. If he really rushed in rashly, it would be difficult for him to do anything alone. On the contrary, he would easily put himself in danger. Therefore, after reaching the end of the insect path and seeing the door to the insect race's great sealed world, the sect leader immediately turned back. He urgently gathered people and held a meeting. At the meeting, he took out the remaining half jar of insect blood and the jade slip that recorded the special refining method, which shocked many higher-ups of the military province's Grand Heaven Alliance. With his personal experience and experiments, his words were undoubtedly very persuasive. Everyone realized that this was an important turning point in the fight against the insect plague in the 9 provinces. The military province had already shared the refining method with the other 8 provinces without hiding anything. They even told the Myriad Demon's Ridge about it. This was not a matter of the Grand Heaven Alliance alone. This was a problem that the entire 9 provinces had to face, so the Myriad Demon Ridge had to contribute. Now, what the 9 provinces cultivation world needed to do was to refine as much insect blood as possible. Once they had enough reserves, they could mobilize all their forces and kill their way into the insect race's great sealed world. As for the source of the special refining method, the sect leader, as requested by Lu Yi, pushed all the blame to him. Such a great contribution from the military province made the higher-ups of the military province radiant. Some people did not understand how Lu Yi, a newly advanced Divine Sea Realm soldier cultivator, came up with this refining method. However, compared to the appearance of the refining method itself, these were minor details. There was no need to delve too deeply into it. Everyone had their own opportunities. After all, Lu Yi was a person who was favored by God. Even if he said that he picked it up from the roadside, who could verify it? It was also at this moment that the 2 camps officially entered the period of large-scale cooperation. This was a major change with epoch-making significance. It had been 2,000 to 3,000 years since the emergence of the 2 camps. They had always been in constant confrontation and dispute. This was the first time that they had sincerely cooperated. It was destined to leave a strong mark in the history of the 9 provinces. Since they were working together, they naturally should not hide anything. Therefore, the Myriad Demon Ridge took the opportunity to request the Grand Heaven Alliance to share the twin spirit-connected formation plate. The Myriad Demon Ridge had been drooling over this thing for a long time. Although they tried to get some formation plates from the Grand Heaven Alliance to study, they awkwardly found that no one could mass-produce it. At present, the matter of the 9 regions cultivation world's counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm was in full swing. For the cultivators living in 9 regions, no matter which camp they came from, fighting against the insect race was an inescapable duty. The Myriad Demon Ridge's intention was obvious. They could contribute and cooperate with the Grand Heaven Alliance sincerely. After all, they were both maintaining the stability of the 9 provinces. However, if they wanted the horse to run, they had to feed the horse well. The Myriad Demon Ridge would send out as many formation plates as the Grand Heaven Alliance could provide. If the Grand Heaven Alliance could provide a large number of formation plates, the entire Myriad Demon Ridge, from the Divine Sea Realm to the Spirit Stream Realm, would definitely send out all their forces. It was reasonable for the Myriad Demon Ridge to make such a request. Among them, this was because everyone knew that once the problem of the insect plague was solved, the relationship between the two camps would return to how it was before. By then, the Grand Heaven Alliance would have the help of the formation plates while the Myriad Demon Ridge did not. They would definitely be at a disadvantage in the confrontation. This was a rare opportunity. If they did not get some benefits from the Grand Heaven Alliance, they would not get another chance. This was their only chance to obtain such a strategic resource in large quantities. The Hautian Alliance also knew that it was hard to reject the request of the Myriad Demons Ridge. If they really wanted to reject it, they couldn't possibly let the Hautian Alliance deal with the insect disaster alone. It didn't make sense. The 9 prefectures belonged to everyone, not the Hautian Alliance. How to give and how much to give were the problems that the Grand Heaven Alliance had to face now. Of course, the pressure was mainly on the Force Province because the formation plates came from the Force Province. Currently, the higher-ups of the two camps were arguing. However, it was foreseeable that once the preparation for the counterattack against the Insect Clan's Mystery Realm was completed, the argument would instantly reach a satisfactory result. Currently, all kinds of news were spreading in the 9 provinces. At the same time, the Jade Blood Sect's Luye's name was known throughout the 9 provinces. He was the refiner of the Twin Chi-connected formation plate, the scout of the Insect Clan's Mystery Realm, and the discoverer of the insect blood extraction method. Regardless of which of the 3 contributions, it was enough to make one famous. With the 3 contributions, even though Luye was only at the Spirit Stream Realm, it was enough for him to become the most dazzling person in the world. Not to mention that he was already at the Divine Sea Realm. Please enter M.com to view the latest update. Chapter 1107. The Sect Master's message was mainly to ask Lu Yi what reward he wanted. After such a huge contribution, the Grand Sky Alliance had to express their gratitude. If they didn't do anything, they would be disappointed. Rewards. Lu Yi thought for a moment. What exactly did he lack? Ordinary cultivators might lack battle credit or merit point. But Lu Yi didn't lack either of those things. He had long since accumulated several million battle credits, and was on his way to reaching the 10,000 mark. No one would believe him if he said it out loud. Based on his current accumulation of military merits, if he were to go to the Department of Official Affairs for a promotion, not to mention a protector, he would probably even be able to become a battalion commander. However, Lu Ye's requirements for military ranks were not high, so he was too lazy to get one. Even if he were to be promoted, it would only increase his monthly salary by a bit. Then fire spirit stones and demonic beast cores, especially poison pills. Lu Yi made his own request. Although he could obtain a certain percentage by refining explosive fire spirit rocks, the talent tree was a bottomless pit. No matter how many explosive fire spirit rocks there were, it would devour them all. There was nothing wrong with storing a little more. Moreover, he felt that his talent tree was going to change again. Because during this period of time, his talent tree had swallowed many fire spirit stones, but there were no signs of new spiritual patterns being activated. As for the demonic beast core, it was mainly prepared for Hupu. The poison pills were left for Hua Ci. This woman left the Cloudy River battlefield and didn't have a suitable cultivation environment. Giving her more poison pills would allow her to grow faster. Just as he finished his message with the sect master, Wei Ling reacted again. Lu Yi checked and realized that it was an order from the Heaven's Gate. They were told to collect bug blood from True Lake Stage and above. This was obviously to prepare the raw materials for refining bug blood. It wasn't a troublesome matter. At the fissures, the cultivators at the 2 mountain passes had been killing bug. It wasn't a problem for them to collect some bugs. Moreover, this order wasn't just sent to this side. All the mountain passes at the front line must have received the order as well. However, there were requirements for collecting bug blood. Normal bug blood wasn't of much use as its quality was too low. It couldn't be refined into anything valuable. Only bug blood from true lake stage and above could be used as raw materials. If it was from divine ocean stage, the effect would naturally be better. Lu Yi passed the order to the fishers and didn't interfere. He continued to cultivate. The entire 9 regions had entered a state of intense preparation. All the cultivators were waiting for the critical moment to arrive. Under such an atmosphere, the 9 regions showed a different style. Even those mortals who didn't cultivate were aware of some subtle changes. The insect disaster had swept through the 9 regions for more than 3 years, causing the people in the entire territory to have no way to make a living. Although there were cultivators protecting the mortals and there were not too many casualties, in these 3 years, no one could see any hope. No one knew when these days would end. But now it was different. The cultivators all understood that the matter of counterattacking the insect race's secret realm had been put on the agenda. It wouldn't be long before this kind of suffering would end, and the 9 regions would return to its previous state. The night breeze blew gently as Lu Yi walked out of the cultivation room. There is no moon tonight, and the sky is full of stars. He was not a person who could cultivate in seclusion for a long time. He was still too young and could not endure that kind of temperament. Therefore, every time he was in seclusion for a period of time, he would casually come out for a walk to relax. When it came to cultivation, it was all about being relaxed. His cultivation speed was already very fast. If he had a more comfortable mood, he would be able to cultivate better. Not far away, there was a conversation between 2 people. They were the cultivators in charge of guarding the city wall of the mountain pass. They seemed to be arguing about something. There were only more than 50 cultivators standing guard at the mountain pass. However, because Lu Yi basically lived in seclusion and came and went with the help of the teleportation array, he did not have much contact with the soldiers under his command. The only people he was familiar with were Yu Huang and a few others. His figure flashed and flew to the 2 people's side. The 2 cultivators were startled. After seeing Lu Ye's figure clearly, they hurriedly saluted, "Sir." Lu Yi responded with his hands behind his back and asked curiously, "What are you arguing about?" One of them said, "Sir, it's like this. Xiao Lu said that there is an extra star in the sky. I said that there are so many stars in the sky. How can you be sure that there is an extra star?" He then argued with me. "There is an extra star." Lu Yi raised his head and looked at the sky. The other younger cultivator, Xiao Lu, blushed and said, "There really is an extra star. Sir, I am on duty here every night. When I have nothing to do, I just look at the stars. Although I don't know how many stars there are in the sky, I can still tell if there is an extra star or less." "Where?" Lu Yi asked curiously. Xiao Lu pointed in a direction and said, "Sir, look over here. There should only be 17 stars here, but now there is an extra star. I vaguely noticed it a few days ago, but I wasn't too sure at the time. Looking at it again today, this extra star is obviously brighter." Lu Yi looked in the direction of his finger and found that there were indeed 18 stars there. However, he was not sure which one was extra. However, he could not say anything about this kind of thing. Moreover, the number of stars was related to the observation environment. Perhaps Xiao Lu did not notice it before, or perhaps the star was covered by clouds. Both were possible. Either way, the cultivators on duty were extremely bored and wanted to find something to do. Without looking around, he said, "You can quarrel, but don't hurt the harmony. Sir, don't worry. We are all as close as brothers. We are used to quarreling. Please don't laugh at us," the older cultivator said. Lu Yi nodded slightly and headed towards the heavenly secret hall in a flash. Teleporting, he went to the fissure to investigate. After more than 2 hours, He came back and relaxed his muscles and bones in the fissure. He killed some insects and started cultivating again. The preparation of the 9 prefectures took 3 months. This could not be helped because they needed to gather enough insect blood. This was not something that could be gathered in a short time. When the insect blood reserve reached the requirement, the counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm was immediately put on the agenda. Lu Yi was summoned and rushed to Haotian City from the Shocking Waves Lake. When he arrived at the sect master's courtyard, the sect master was waiting for him. Lu Yi was puzzled. With my cultivation level, why do I have to attend the meeting? On the way here, he had asked the hierarch and learned that it was Pang Zhen who asked him to attend the meeting. The meeting had always been a meeting of the highest level of the Haotian alliance in the military state. Only the hierarch who was in the elder group or the head of a department like Qian Wudong was qualified to attend. Ordinary 8th or 9th order Divine Sea Realm cultivators are not qualified to attend, but Lu Yi, a 4th order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, was called. He could not help but feel flattered. The sect master led him to the Light Harmony Hall while explaining, because you have once entered the insect race's great secret realm, you know the situation inside the best. Although you brought back images, it is not as real as seeing it with your own eyes, so you need to make some explanations. In addition, you may need to be the vanguard. Of course, no one will force you to do this. You can consider whether to accept or not. Vanguard, Lu Yi frowned. It was not easy to be a vanguard, especially for such a large-scale operation. What does the sect master mean? The sect master was silent for a moment. If you can guarantee your own safety, you can accept this. But if you can't, you can refuse directly. There is no reason to let a young man like you take on too much responsibility. Lu Yi nodded slightly. Following the sect master to the Light Harmony Hall, Lu Yi stepped inside. In an instant, all eyes were on him. One had to know that those sitting here were the highest-level figures of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. All of them were 9th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivators, and there were only a dozen of them in total. They were the leaders of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. It could be said that their words and actions determined the overall direction of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. Some people looked at him with scrutinizing eyes, some with interest, and some with obvious admiration. Lu Yi followed closely behind the hierarch and came to the side of the table. The hierarch sat down and gestured, "You sit too." Lu Yi obediently sat down beside him. Suddenly, the battlefield mark moved. Lu Yi quietly checked it and found that it was Gan Wudong who sent him a message. "Don't be so nervous. One day, you will be able to walk in here by yourself." Looking up, Lu Yi saw Gan Wudong smiling at him across the table. Lu Yi pretended not to see him and did not reply. At the head of the table, Pang Zhen knocked on the table. "Everyone is here. I want to announce something. After the high-level discussions of the 2 camps, we will launch a full-scale counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm in 3 days." Everyone had obviously received this news from different sources. Therefore, there was not much of a reaction. Now that everyone was gathered, they needed to discuss the specific operation. This was a large-scale operation that involved the entire 9 states. What kind of people were qualified to participate, how many people each side would send, and how the personnel would be distributed would all need to be carefully considered. They couldn't just send out an order and have everyone rush forward. That would only cause chaos. Because of the limited scale of the insect path, only cultivators above the true lake realm were allowed to participate in the counterattack. Those below the true lake realm were not allowed to participate, not only because of the limited scale of the insect path, but also because of their strength. The insect race's great secret realm was filled with danger. Those with low strength would only cause more trouble and casualties. In such an environment, only cultivators above the true lake realm could play a role. With this requirement, 90% of the 9 states' cultivators would be excluded. However, the number of cultivators in the 9 states was huge. Even if only cultivators above the true lake realm were allowed to participate, they would still be able to gather a huge number of people to deal with the insect race's great secret realm. Although the time had been set, how to maintain the unity of the operation was still a problem. Therefore, when the time came, the cultivators from the 9 states would need to enter from different cracks in the ground. They would need to maintain contact and advance simultaneously. Then, they would continue to converge and reach the door at the end of the insect path. Then, they would gather outside the 9 doors and attack the insect race's great secret realm together. Only then would they be able to sweep through the insect race's great secret realm. Chapter 1108. This was the main topic of discussion at the grand meeting this time. Lu Yi sat next to the sect leader and listened to the ministers and members of the elder group express their opinions and views before Pang Zhen made the final decision. He realized that everyone was very brief and did not drag their feet when making decisions. This was probably the style of cultivators. Of course, it could also be that time was limited. The day of the counterattack was in 3 days, so the grand meeting could not be delayed for too long. After listening, Lu Yi had a general understanding of the plan for this operation. Now that the 9 provinces had enough reserves of insect blood that had been refined through special methods, although the suppression of the magnetic field on cultivators was still there, it could no longer stop the 9 provinces' cultivators from counterattacking. This counterattack on the insect clan's great secret realm was divided into 3 stages. The first stage was to kill their way into the insect path, from the crack in the ground, and push all the way to the door at the end of the insect path. This stage was not difficult. Even if they pushed to the end and the cultivators could only use 60% of their strength, as long as there were enough of them and they cooperated well, they could still gain a foothold in front of the door. Moreover, because the people who carried out this stage were all top-notch divine ocean cultivators, there would not be too many casualties. If they were lucky, they could even achieve 0 casualties. This stage would last for about 10 days. After all, it was a long journey from the crack in the ground to the door, so it could not be done in one go. Back then, Lu Yi hid on the back of the scarab and went deep into the insect clan's great secret realm. It took him a month to go back and forth. When the goal of the first stage was completed, it was time to prepare for the second stage. The time node was in front of the 9 doors. When the vanguard powerhouses of the 9 provinces had gathered, the powerhouses of the 9 provinces would rush into the insect clan's great secret realm and attack the 9 doors. There was only one goal, which was to gain a foothold in front of the door. It was impossible for the vanguard of the 9 provinces to wipe out the insect clan's great secret realm alone. No matter how strong they were, their numbers were limited. Therefore, their mission was to build a defense line in front of the door and resist the insect clan's counterattack. At that time, the reinforcements would be able to continuously enter the insect clan's great secret realm. It was impossible to estimate how long this phase would take, but it was undoubtedly the most dangerous phase. Once they entered the bug race's secret realm, the vanguard experts would have to fight non-stop. They could not retreat, as the door to reinforcements was right behind them. There was no way out and they could not escape. The bug race's secret realm was filled with bug race members. Where could they escape to? He could only endure it. If he could resist, he would live. If he couldn't, he would die. Or become a pirated dog. When the 9 prefectures' army passed through the 9 gates, all of them headed for the insect race. In the great mystery realm, they would enter the 3rd stage. 9 armies would attack the Zergs from 9 different directions and fight to the death. The plan was simple and clear. There were no tricks involved. After all, the opponent was an insectoid with low intelligence, so there was no need to play any tricks. Furthermore, the environment was limited, so there was no room for any trick. What the 9 prefectures relied on was the huge number of cultivators and the endless number of powerhouses. They were confident that they would not lose in such a confrontation. You have all seen the interior of the insect race's great mystery realm before. You have studied it and have a certain understanding of the overall environment inside. However, seeing it doesn't mean that you have personally been there. Now, in the military province, there is only one person who has personally entered the insect race's great mystery realm. As Pang Zhen spoke, he turned to look at Lu Yi. The rest of the people also looked over. Lu Yi, I called you here today because you have the experience of sneaking into the insect race's great mystery realm. I hope you can explain the scene in the Shadow Stone in detail. The sect master had already informed them of this matter on the way here, so Lu Yi stood up and bowed respectfully. Lu Yi greets everyone. Since Vice Alliance leader Pang has given his orders, this lowly one will naturally obey. Then I will have to delay everyone for a bit. The sect leader handed over a shadow stone. Lu Yi picked it up and poured his spiritual power into it. In an instant, the scene in the shadow stone appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Lu Yi looked at the scene a little and determined that it was the location when he first entered the insect race's great mystery realm. He then said, "Everyone, please take a look. This great mystery realm is basically not out of the scope of a sealed world space, which means it has an edge. The location of each portal is at the very edge, which is extremely advantageous for our operation because as long as we stand firmly in front of the portal, we won't have to worry about danger from behind. We only need to deal with the top, the front, and the left and right." Although they had seen the scenes recorded in the image recording stone many times, they still listened attentively to Lu Yi's explanation. Some even asked questions. Lu Yi answered them one by one. The scene in the Shadow Stone could basically show the situation of the entire insect race's great mystery realm. Everyone was at the 9th Order Divine Sea Realm, so after seeing the scene, they could basically picture the real situation in their minds. After about an incense stick worth of time, Lu Yi finished his explanation. Pang Zhen said, "If you were to join the Vanguard Battalion and act as a vanguard to open a path for the army, would you be willing?" The sect master had also told him about this in advance, so Lu Yi immediately nodded. This subordinate is willing. A 4th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivation wasn't weak, and he had many trump cards. What's more, his foundation was more solid than that of ordinary cultivators, so it wouldn't be a problem for him to be a vanguard. Moreover, he wasn't the only one in the Vanguard Battalion. When the time came, he would still need to act together with the other Vanguard Masters of the War Province, so it wouldn't be too dangerous. The sect master obviously understood this, so he didn't say anything definite and just let Lu Yi act according to his wishes. This disciple of his was indeed young, but since he was at the Divine Sea Realm, he should have the responsibility of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. If he retreated no matter what happened, he wouldn't have much success in the future. Throughout history, only those cultivators who faced difficulties head-on were able to go further than others. Very good. Then you will join the Vanguard Battalion. Pang Zhen nodded with satisfaction. Lu Yi continued, however, this subordinate has a proposal that I would like to ask everyone to decide. Everyone looked over with interest. Pang Zhen smiled slightly. What proposal? Let's hear it. After listening to the 3 stages of this operation, this subordinate felt that the early stage of the 2nd stage was very dangerous. It wasn't easy to establish a foothold in front of the door and build a defensive line. When the time comes, there will be countless insect race swarming over. This subordinate was thinking that if we divert the insect race's attention at this time, we might be able to reduce the pressure in front of the door. Pang Zhen nodded. We have thought about this problem before, but we didn't have any clues. In fact, it would be the best choice to let Yanshi send out those creations, but unfortunately, Yanshi school has declined in the 9 continents, and there are very few Divine Sea Realm cultivators in Yanshi, so they can't be of much use. As for using the beast taming school to control monster beasts, it is even more impossible to talk about. First of all, monster beasts are flesh and blood. Once they appear in the insect race's secret realm, they will become the target of the insect race's attack. There is no way to divert the insect race's attention. Lu Yi asked, "What if we use the insect race?" Insect race? Pang Zhen raised his eyebrows slightly. This subordinate has a method to control the insect race. Last time, we were able to sneak into the insect race's secret realm because of this method. Therefore, this subordinate is thinking that if I can control enough insect race and let them carry some explosive fire spirit stones, we can enter the insect race's secret realm one step ahead of the vanguard battalion and place them in various places. Once the explosive fire spirit stones are activated, it will attract the attention of a large number of insect race, and the vanguard battalion can take the opportunity to kill their way in. The time we can buy may not be much, but at that time it will be worth it, and it will also be more convenient for the vanguard battalion to consolidate the front line. Pang Zhen's expression brightened. How many insect race can you control? 100 or 200 shouldn't be a problem, Lu Yi replied casually. Of course, there should be no limit to this number. However, if this plan was to be carried out, it was impossible for him to control too many insect race. There was not enough time, and the insect path space was not big enough to be used. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Just imagine 100 or 200 insect race carrying explosive fire spirit stones scattered in various parts of the insect race's secret realm. Once the explosive fire spirit stones were detonated, the spiritual energy would definitely be chaotic, and the situation would be chaotic. The insect race was extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. When they felt the fluctuations, they would definitely be attracted. In this way, the pressure in front of the door would be reduced. At that time, they would not dare to say how much time they could buy, but even if it was just 1 or 2 breaths of time, it would be enough to prevent a certain degree of casualties. If they could hold on for more than 10 breaths of time, it would be a great help. This plan was very promising. What do you all think? Pang Zhen turned his head to look at both sides. How could anyone have any opinions? If this could be done, they would be happy to see it happen. Naturally, they would not stop it. Instead, they would vigorously promote it. After quickly reaching an agreement, Lu Ye's proposal was passed. Then this matter is settled. I have already discussed with the Demon City. The location of the vanguard camp will be at the crack between the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Everyone, please spread the news. The people on the list of the vanguard camp must gather at the designated location within 3 days. This is the first large-scale joint operation in the history of the War Province, and also the first in the history of the 9 provinces. This concerns the face of the War Province's Haotian alliance, so I hope everyone will be cautious. After the meeting ended, Lu Yi followed the head teacher out of the Light Harmony Hall. The head teacher said, "The war is imminent. Is there anything you need to prepare?" Lu Yi shook his head. "There's nothing to prepare. All kinds of materials are available, so there's no need to buy anything. Then go back to the pass and prepare. The location of the gathering is there. You're also close." "Yes." Lu Yi leaped up and flew toward the pass. The location of the vanguard camp's gathering was at the crack between the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or intentional, but for the War Province's 2 camps, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass were the first to join forces. It was quite representative of the 2 camps, so it was reasonable to choose this place.